The energy blast hits Chris Turner square in the chest. It should have vaporized him instantly. Instead, the human ambassador stumbles back 2 steps, blinks, and straightens his suit jacket. Chaos erupts in the Tholian marketplace. Crystalline aliens scatter, their faceted bodies reflecting the scene in fractured images. Chris's escort, Thea, stares in shock, her own armored exoskeleton glinting in the harsh light of Tholia's twin suns. Ambassador, we must flee. Thea's translator crackles with urgency. But Chris doesn't run. He can't. Not when innocent civilians are in danger. The rogue Tholian extremists, a radicalized group opposing interspecies relations, unleash another barrage of energy weapons. Each blast strikes Chris with enough force to shatter stone, yet he remains standing. The human's durability becomes impossible to ignore. Tholian onlookers freeze, their crystalline forms vibrating with a mixture of fear and fascination. Even the extremists hesitate, their weapon arms wavering. Chris seizes the moment. He charges forward, closing the distance between himself and the nearest attacker in seconds. The Tholian swings a razor-sharp appendage, but Chris ducks under it with surprising agility. He grapples the alien, using leverage to flip the much heavier being onto its back. The marketplace fills with the sound of shattering crystal as Chris systematically dismantles the extremist group. His movements are fluid, precise, and devastatingly effective against the naturally armored Tholians. Each punch cracks exoskeletons. Each throw sends shards of alien carapace skittering across the ground. Tholian military officials, present for the diplomatic visit, watch in stunned silence. Their tactical minds race to process the implications of what they're witnessing. Humans, long dismissed as soft and vulnerable, are revealing themselves to be formidable physical specimens. As quickly as it began, the fight ends. Chris stands amid a group of incapacitated extremists, his breath coming in steady, controlled bursts. He sustained no visible injuries despite the onslaught of attacks that would have reduced any Tholian to a pile of shimmering dust. Ambassador Turner, a high-ranking Tholian military official, approaches cautiously. We must secure you immediately. For your own protection, of course. Chris nods, understanding the unspoken subtext. He's no longer just a diplomat. He's become a subject of intense scientific and military interest. As Tholian security forces surround him, he catches snippets of urgent communications. Unprecedented resilience. Potential military applications. Must study the human immediately. The diplomatic crisis unfolds with dizzying speed. News of the incident spreads through Tholian information networks faster than light. Scientists demand access to Chris for study. Military strategists call for immediate reassessment of human capabilities. As Chris is escorted away, ostensibly for his safety, he realizes the true gravity of the situation. His display of seemingly indestructible physiology has shattered Tholian perceptions of humanity. Questions swirl in the crystalline minds of his hosts. Why do humans lack natural armor when they're so resilient? What other hidden capabilities might they possess? The answers to these questions will reshape the balance of power between Earth and Tholia. As Chris is led into a secure facility, he knows that the future of human-Tholian relations now rests on his unarmored, yet indestructible, shoulders. Chris Turner's world narrowed to the confines of a crystalline chamber, its faceted walls refracting harsh light from Tholia's twin suns. The transition from marketplace chaos to sterile confinement had been swift and disorienting. Now, as he stood in the center of the room, he could feel the weight of countless eyes upon him. Dr. ZYX, a Tholian xenobiologist with an exoskeleton that shimmered with iridescent hues, circled Chris with an air of almost unchecked excitement. The alien's crystalline appendages manipulated a series of holographic displays, each one flickering with data streams that Chris couldn't begin to decipher. Fascinating, Dr. ZYX's translator crackled. Your cellular structure defies all known biological paradigms, Ambassador Turner. Chris remained silent, his mind racing. He knew that every word, every action would be scrutinized and analyzed. The diplomatic crisis he had inadvertently sparked was evolving rapidly, and he needed to tread carefully. A sudden surge of energy coursed through the room, causing Chris's hair to stand on end. He instinctively braced himself, expecting pain, but felt only a mild, tingling sensation. Dr. ZYX's crystalline form vibrated with excitement. Incredible! You've just withstood a charge that would have shattered any Tholian exoskeleton, the scientist exclaimed. Before Chris could respond, the chamber's entrance shimmered and a group of Tholian military officials entered. Their razor-sharp appendages clicked against the floor, a sound that set Chris's nerves on edge. Dr. ZYX report, demanded the lead Tholian, its voice translated into a grating metallic tone. General Crix, the human's resilience is unprecedented. Dr. ZYX responded. His cellular regeneration rate is off the charts. We must conduct more thorough examinations too. Enough! General Crix interrupted. This is no longer a matter for scientific curiosity. The human poses a potential threat to Tholian security. Chris felt the atmosphere in the room shift. The clinical detachment of scientific inquiry was rapidly giving way to something far more dangerous. With all due respect, General, Chris interjected, keeping his voice level, I am here as a diplomatic representative of Earth. Any unauthorized tests or detainment would be a violation of interstellar law. General Crix's crystalline form seemed to darken, refracting light in ominous patterns. Laws can be reinterpreted in light of new information, Ambassador. Your capabilities have changed the equation. The tension in the room was palpable. Chris could sense the conflicting agendas swirling around him, scientific curiosity warring with military paranoia. He knew he had to find a way to de-escalate the situation before it spiraled out of control. Suddenly, the chamber's communication system crackled to life. Incoming transmission from Earth, announced an automated voice. A holographic display materialized in the center of the room, revealing the stern visage of Ambassador John Steele. His eyes locked onto Chris, a mixture of concern and dedication evident in his gaze. This is Ambassador Steele of Earth. His voice resonated through the chamber. We demand the immediate release of Ambassador Turner. Any further detention will be considered an act of aggression against Earth and its allies. General Crix bristled visibly, his crystalline form emitting a high-pitched frequency that made Chris wince. Your demands are irrelevant, Earth Ambassador. The human in our custody represents a clear and present danger to Tholian security. As the two diplomats engaged in a heated exchange, Chris noticed Dr. ZYX discreetly manipulating a series of controls. The xenobiologist caught Chris's eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. Suddenly, the temperature in the chamber plummeted. Frost began to form on the crystalline walls, and Chris could see his breath misting in the air. The Tholians, their bodies ill-equipped for such extreme cold, began to slow and stutter in their movements. What is the meaning of this? General Crix demanded, his translator struggling to convey his words through chattering crystalline structures. Dr. ZYX's voice came through clearly, unaffected by the cold. A simple demonstration, General. While we debate, our subject continues to adapt to conditions that would shatter our own bodies. Chris stood tall, his body seemingly unaffected by the frigid temperature. He could feel the eyes of every Tholian upon him, their crystalline forms vibrating with a mixture of fear and awe. Ambassador Steele's hologram flickered, his eyes widening as he took in the scene. As you can see, General Crix, he said, his voice carrying a note of triumph, humans are full of surprises. Perhaps it's time we discussed a more cooperative approach to understanding our species. The temperature began to normalize, and Chris could see the conflict playing out across General Crix's faceted form. The military leader was clearly torn between his instinct for aggression and the dawning realization that humans might be more valuable as allies than as subjects. Before anyone could speak, alarms began to blare throughout the facility. The chamber's entrance shimmered once more, and a familiar form burst through. Thea, Chris's Tholian escort from the marketplace. "Ambassador Turner," she exclaimed, her translator barely keeping up with her rapid speech. "We must leave immediately. I've uncovered evidence of a conspiracy." The attack in the marketplace was just the beginning. Chris locked eyes with Ambassador Steele's hologram, silently communicating years of shared experience and trust. Steele gave a subtle nod. "I believe this conversation will have to be continued at a later time, gentlemen," Chris said, his voice calm despite the chaos erupting around him. With a swift motion, he moved to Thea's side. As they prepared to make their escape, Chris knew that the true challenges were only beginning. The secrets of human physiology, the political machinations of Tholian hardliners, and the delicate balance of interstellar relations all hung in the balance. And at the center of it all stood Chris Turner, diplomat, survivor, and now, the key to a mystery that could reshape the galaxy. Chris and Thea burst from the crystalline chamber, the alarms blaring behind them. The Tholian facility's corridors twisted in refracted light, creating a disorienting maze. Chris's mind raced, processing Thea's warning about a larger conspiracy. "This way," Thea urged, her crystalline form glinting as she led Chris through a series of sharp turns. They emerged onto the planet's surface, the harsh light of Tholia's twin suns momentarily blinding Chris. As his eyes adjusted, he took in the alien landscape, jagged crystal formations stretching as far as the eye could see, their facets reflecting and amplifying the already intense sunlight. "We need to move quickly," Thea said, her translator crackling with urgency. "They'll have the entire security force after us soon." No sooner had the words left her translator than a high-pitched whine filled the air. Chris looked up to see a swarm of sleek, crystalline drones descending upon them, their forms shimmering with heat-seeking sensors. "Run!" Chris shouted, grabbing Thea's arm and pulling her towards a nearby ravine. They sprinted across the treacherous terrain, crystal shards crunching beneath their feet. The drones closed in, their heat-seeking technology locked onto Chris's warm human form. Suddenly, a geyser of superheated plasma erupted from the ground mere meters away, its intense heat causing the nearest drones to shatter and fall from the sky. Chris felt the searing heat wash over him, singeing his clothes and hair. Yet, remarkably, his skin remained unburned. Thea stared at him in amazement, her crystalline form vibrating with a mixture of fear and awe. How is that possible?" she asked, her translator struggling to convey her astonishment. "I wish I knew," Chris replied, his breath coming in steady bursts despite their frantic pace. They pressed on, navigating through a field of geysers. Each eruption sent plumes of superheated plasma into the air, creating a deadly obstacle course. Chris's seemingly indestructible nature was put to the test as they weaved through the hazardous terrain. Thea, with her knowledge of Tholian geography, guided them through the safest paths, her respect for Chris growing with each impossible feat of endurance. As they crested a ridge, Chris spotted a dark opening in the crystalline landscape ahead. "There," he shouted, pointing towards what appeared to be the entrance to a vast cavern. They made a final sprint for the cave, the sound of Tholian ground units echoing behind them. Just as they reached the entrance, a voice boomed across the crystal plains. "This is Captain Zorn of Tholian Security. Surrender immediately or face immediate termination." Chris and Thea exchanged a glance before plunging into the darkness of the cavern. The crystalline walls seemed to absorb the harsh sunlight, plunging them into near-total darkness. As their eyes adjusted, they found themselves in a massive underground chamber filled with abandoned mining equipment. "An old Tholian mining facility," Thea whispered, her voice filled with surprise. I thought this place was destroyed years ago. Chris surveyed the area, his diplomatic training kicking in as he assessed their options. His eyes fell upon a cluster of outdated, but potentially functional communication devices. "Thea, can you help me with these?" he asked, moving towards the equipment. "If we can get a signal out, we might be able to contact the diplomatic vessel." As they worked to jury-rig a transmitter, the sound of Tholian forces echoed from the cavern entrance. Time was running out. Chris's fingers flew over the alien controls, his technical expertise allowing him to coax life from the long-dormant machinery. Just as the first Tholian soldiers entered the chamber, a light on the transmitter flickered to life. Chris quickly input an encrypted distress signal, praying it would reach the human diplomatic vessel. "We've got company," Thea warned, her crystalline form tensing for a fight. Chris turned to face the advancing Tholian forces, acutely aware that their discovery of this facility might have far greater implications than he realized. As Captain Zorn's troops surrounded them, Chris caught a glimpse of something strange deeper in the cavern, an artifact of clearly non-Tholian origin, pulsing with an otherworldly energy. The air crackled with tension as Chris and Thea stood their ground, the fate of not just themselves, but potentially the entire galaxy, hanging in the balance. The true nature of the conspiracy Thea had uncovered was about to reveal itself, and Chris knew that his next actions would shape the course of human-Tholian relations for years to come. The ancient artifact pulsed with otherworldly energy, its power building to a crescendo. Chris barely had time to shout a warning before a blinding flash engulfed the cavern. When the light faded, an eerie silence fell over the underground chamber. The Tholian forces stood motionless, their crystalline forms dulled and unresponsive. Chris blinked, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. "Thea, are you all right?" he called out, his voice echoing in the stillness. "I'm here," she responded, her translator crackling with static. "But something's wrong. My systems are malfunctioning." Chris helped Thea to her feet, noticing the usually vibrant facets of her crystalline body were now muted and sluggish. The energy pulse from the artifact had clearly affected Tholian technology on a massive scale. "We need to move," Chris urged, glancing at the immobilized Tholian soldiers. "This might be our only chance to escape." They made their way through the cavern, past the frozen forms of Captain Zorn and his troops. As they approached the entrance, Chris could hear the distant sound of chaos erupting on the planet's surface. Emerging from the crystal cave, they were met with a scene of utter disarray. The Tholian city sprawled before them, its once gleaming spires now dark and lifeless. Civilians wandered the streets in confusion, their bodies moving with jerky, uncoordinated motions as their internal systems struggled to cope with the aftermath of the energy pulse. "The entire planet must be affected," Thea observed, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and concern. Chris nodded grimly. "We need to use this to our advantage. Where's the closest extraction point?" Thea pointed towards a distant plateau. "There's a clearing about 5 kilometers in that direction. It's often used for off-world transport." They set off across the treacherous crystalline landscape, navigating through fields of razor-sharp formations and pockets of superheated plasma. Chris's extraordinary resilience was put to the test as they traversed the hostile terrain, his body adapting to extreme temperature fluctuations and resisting cuts from the jagged crystals. As they climbed a steep incline, Chris heard a loud crack. He turned to see a massive crystal formation beginning to collapse, its structural integrity compromised by the energy pulse. To his horror, he spied a group of Tholian civilians trapped in its path. Without hesitation, Chris sprinted towards the falling crystal. "Thea, help me evacuate them," he shouted, his muscles tensing as he prepared for the impossible. Reaching the base of the collapsing formation, Chris planted his feet and thrust his hands upward. The massive crystal shard, easily weighing several tons, pressed down on him. For a moment, it seemed as if he would be crushed. Then, with a grunt of exertion, Chris began to lift. The trapped Tholians watched in amazement as the human before them hefted the enormous crystal, creating an escape route. Thea quickly ushered them to safety, her translator working overtime to calm their panicked exclamations. As the last Tholian cleared the danger zone, Chris let out a final roar of effort and tossed the crystal shard aside. It shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces, casting prismatic reflections across the landscape. The rescued Tholians gathered around Chris, their crystalline forms vibrating with what he could only assume was gratitude. One of them stepped forward, its translator sputtering to life. "You saved us," it said, the words filled with disbelief. "But our leader said humans were a threat." Chris smiled, his breath coming in short gasps as he recovered from the Herculean feat. "We're not so different, you and I. We both want to live in peace." The moment was interrupted by the distant whine of Tholian security drones. Chris knew they couldn't linger. "We have to go," he told Thea, casting an apologetic glance at the civilians. "Stay safe, and remember what you saw here today." As they resumed their journey towards the extraction point, Chris could hear the Tholians behind them, their voices raised in animated discussion. He hoped their experience would spread, challenging the hardline narrative pushed by General Crix and his allies. The extraction point was now visible in the distance, a flat expanse amidst the jagged crystal formations. But as they approached, Chris spotted movement on the horizon. A group of Tholian military vehicles was converging on their location, led by a sleek, menacing craft that could only belong to an elite unit. "Commander Vex," Thea whispered, her voice tight with fear. "He leads General Crix's most ruthless soldiers. If they catch us—" Chris set his jaw, perseverance etched in every line of his face. "They won't," he assured her. "Look there." He pointed to an abandoned Tholian transport vehicle half buried in crystal debris. It was clearly damaged, but Chris's eyes gleamed with the spark of an idea. "Can you help me get that running?" he asked Thea, already moving towards the vehicle. Thea's crystalline form seemed to brighten with understanding. "If we can bypass the security protocols, yes. But Chris, even if we succeed, we'll be flying straight into a war zone." Chris grinned, the thrill of the challenge evident in his voice. "Then it's a good thing you've got an indestructible pilot." As they worked to revive the dormant transport, the sounds of approaching Tholian forces grew louder. Chris's fingers flew over the alien controls, his diplomatic training in Tholian technology proving invaluable. Thea provided crucial guidance, her knowledge filling in the gaps in Chris's expertise. With a stuttering whine, the transport's engines came to life. Chris and Thea clambered aboard just as Commander Vex's forces crested the nearest ridge. "Hold on," Chris warned, gripping the controls tightly. "This is going to be a rough ride." The transport lurched forward, its crystalline structure groaning under the strain. Chris piloted the unwieldy craft with surprising skill, weaving between crystal formations and narrowly avoiding gouts of superheated plasma that erupted from the planet's unstable surface. Commander Vex's voice crackled over the transport's communication system, harsh and threatening. "Surrender now, human, or face total annihilation." Chris didn't bother to respond. He was too focused on navigating the treacherous terrain while evading the energy blast from pursuing Tholian vessels. Thea clung to her seat, her crystalline form vibrating with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. As they neared the extraction point, Chris could see a shimmering distortion in the air above, the telltale sign of a cloaked ship. Hope surged within him. The human diplomatic vessel must be waiting to extract them. But between them and safety stood Commander Vex's forces, their weapons primed and ready to unleash a barrage that would shatter their stolen transport into a million glittering shards. Chris gripped the controls tighter, his mind racing as he prepared for the final, desperate push to freedom. The fate of not just himself and Thea, but potentially the entire galaxy, hung in the balance of the next few moments. Chris gritted his teeth, hands clenched on the controls as he pushed the stolen Tholian transport to its limits. The extraction point loomed ahead, a shimmering distortion in the crystalline landscape that promised salvation. But Commander Vex's forces were closing in fast, their energy weapons primed to unleash a devastating barrage. Chris could hear the ominous whine of their engines growing louder by the second. Suddenly, the transport's control panel erupted in a shower of sparks. Alarms blared as the vehicle began to shudder violently. "We're losing power," Thea shouted, her crystalline form vibrating with alarm. "The engine can't take much more." Chris's mind raced, assessing their options in a split second. The extraction point was so close, yet with the failing transport, it might as well have been light years away. He made his decision. "Brace yourself," he yelled, yanking the controls hard to the right. The transport lurched, careening towards a relatively clear patch of ground. "We're going down!" As the ground rushed up to meet them, Chris unbuckled his restraints and threw himself over Thea, using his indestructible body as a shield. The impact was catastrophic. Metal and crystal alike shattered as the transport plowed into the unforgiving terrain, carving a deep furrow before coming to a violent stop. For a moment, all was silent save for the crackle of flames and the settling of debris. Then, with a groan of twisting metal, Chris emerged from the wreckage. His clothes were torn and singed, but his body was unmarked. In his arms, he cradled Thea, who was injured but alive. As Chris set Thea gently on the ground, he became aware of movement around them. Tholian civilians, drawn by the spectacle of the crash, had gathered at a safe distance. Their crystalline forms vibrated with a mixture of fear and curiosity as they watched the unscathed human tend to his Tholian companion. The moment of quiet was shattered by the roar of engines. Chris looked up to see sleek, dark shuttles descending from the sky, the human marine extraction team. At the same time, Commander Vex's forces crested a nearby ridge, their weapons trained on the crash site. The marine shuttles touched down, disgorging a squad of heavily armed soldiers led by a grizzled veteran Chris recognized as Sergeant Jack Harper. They quickly formed a defensive perimeter around Chris and Thea, their advanced weaponry presenting a formidable obstacle to the approaching Tholian forces. "Ambassador Steele sent us to get you out," Harper said, his voice gruff but tinged with respect. "Looks like we got here just in time." Chris nodded, helping Thea to her feet. "Thanks for the assist, Sergeant. But I'm afraid this situation just got a lot more complicated." He gestured to the gathering crowd of Tholian civilians and the advancing military units. The two groups faced each other across the crash site, the air thick with tension. A single wrong move could spark a conflict with dire consequences. Suddenly, a new group appeared on the scene. A contingent of Tholian officials approached, led by a figure Chris recognized from diplomatic briefings, Minister Lyra, a moderate voice in the Tholian government. "Hold your fire," Lyra called out, her translator broadcasting in both Tholian and English. "We are here to negotiate a peaceful resolution." But before anyone could respond, the sky lit up with a brilliant, searing light. Energy beams lanced down from orbit, striking the ground around them with devastating force. The Tholian orbital platforms had opened fire, turning the extraction point into a kill zone. Without hesitation, Chris sprinted towards the center of the bombardment. He planted his feet firmly on the ground, arms spread wide as he positioned himself between the deadly barrage and the gathered Tholians and humans. The energy beam struck Chris with enough force to vaporize a small building. Yet he stood firm, his indestructible body absorbing the onslaught. The ground beneath his feet melted into slag, but Chris remained unscathed, a living shield against the orbital strike. Tholians and humans alike watched in awe as Chris withstood the impossible. The display of raw power and selfless protection sent shockwaves through the gathered crowd, challenging long-held beliefs about human nature. Just as it seemed the bombardment would never end, a massive shadow fell over the battlefield. The HSS Invincible, Earth's most advanced warship, decloaked directly above them. Its weapon systems came to life, firing precise, devastatingly powerful shots that neutralized the Tholian orbital platforms without causing collateral damage. In the stunned silence that followed, Chris seized his chance. Though he couldn't speak Tholian, he stepped forward, arms open in a universal gesture of peace. He pointed to the humans, then to the Tholians, and finally brought his hands together. The simple yet powerful message was broadcast across Tholian communication channels. Civilians and soldiers alike found themselves reevaluating their perception of humans in light of Chris's extraordinary actions. Minister Lyra, recognizing the pivotal moment, took control of the situation. "Commander Vex," she announced, her voice amplified for all to hear. "You are hereby under arrest for following illegal orders and endangering Tholian lives." As Vex was taken into custody by Lyra's security detail, she turned to Chris and the human Marines. "On behalf of the Tholian people, I officially request human assistance in stabilizing our government and addressing the crisis at hand." But even as a new era of human-Tholian cooperation seemed to be dawning, a low rumble began to build beneath their feet. The ground shook, and in the distance, massive crystal formations began to collapse. The energy pulse from the artifact, Thea realized, her voice filled with dread. It's destabilizing the planet's geological structure. Chris looked from the human extraction team to the frightened Tholian civilians, then back to the HSS Invincible hovering above. He knew he faced a monumental decision, one that would shape not only his fate, but the future of interstellar relations. As crystal spires in the nearby Tholian city began to topple, Chris set his jaw, ready to make his choice. With the ground trembling beneath his feet and the ominous sound of shattering crystal echoing in the distance, Chris knew what he had to do. "Sergeant Harper," he called out, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Get your team and as many Tholians as you can safely evacuate onto the Invincible." Harper's eyebrows shot up. "What about you, sir?" Chris shook his head. "I'm staying. These people need help, and I'm uniquely equipped to provide it." Before Harper could protest, Ambassador Steele's voice crackled over the comm. "I concur with Chris's assessment. Captain Drake, prepare to receive evacuees and coordinate with Chris on the ground. We're not abandoning our new allies." As the Marines began organizing the evacuation, Chris turned to Minister Lyra and Thea. "We need to stabilize the planet's crust. Do you have any technology that might help?" Lyra's crystalline form vibrated with urgency. "Our geological stabilizers were never designed for a crisis of this magnitude. But with your assistance, we might be able to adapt them." Chris nodded. "Let's get to work." Over the next few hours, Chris found himself at the heart of a frantic operation. Human engineers from the Invincible, led by a grizzled veteran named Commander Thorne, worked alongside Tholian scientists to modify their stabilization technology. Chris's indestructibility proved invaluable as he ventured into collapsing caverns and teetering crystal spires to place the modified devices. More than once, he emerged from a pile of rubble, dusting himself off as astonished Tholians looked on. "That's another sector secured," Chris reported, tapping his comm link as he climbed out of a fissure that had nearly swallowed an entire city block. "How are we looking, Commander Thorne?" The engineer's gruff voice came through clearly despite the background noise of alarms and shouted orders. "Better, but not great. We've stabilized the major population centers, but the planet's crust is still deteriorating faster than we can patch it." From orbit, Captain Drake's voice joined the conversation. "Our sensors are detecting a massive energy spike near the artifact's original location. Whatever triggered this isn't finished yet." Chris exchanged a look with Thea, who had been working tirelessly alongside him. We need to investigate that artifact. It might be the key to stopping this. As they made their way to the abandoned mining facility where the artifact had been discovered, Chris couldn't help but marvel at the scene around him. Humans and Tholians worked side by side, their previous mistrust set aside in the face of crisis. Even some of the civilians he and Thea had encountered earlier were pitching in, guided by human marines in rescue efforts. The mining facility loomed ahead, its crystal structures warped and fractured by the ongoing geological instability. As they approached, a tremor shook the ground, nearly knocking Thea off her feet. Chris steadied her, his own footing unaffected by the quake. Inside, they found a team of human and Tholian scientists already at work. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a xenobiologist Chris recognized from briefings on human cellular regeneration, was examining readouts from a device pointed at the pulsing artifact. "Ambassador," she greeted Chris, her eyes never leaving her data pad. "This artifact is unlike anything we've ever encountered. It's emitting a low-level energy field that's somehow resonating with the planet's crystal structures." Chris frowned. "Can we shut it down?" Dr. Rodriguez shook her head. "Not safely. At least not yet. We're still trying to understand its basic functions. Deactivating it improperly could trigger a planet-wide catastrophe." Before Chris could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Captain Drake's voice came through on all channels, tight with urgency. "The artifact's energy output is spiking again. We're detecting massive seismic disturbances across the planet." Chris looked at the artifact, its pulsing glow intensifying by the second. In that moment, he knew what he had to do. Without a word, he strode towards the alien device. "Chris, wait," Thea called out, but he was already moving. Reaching the artifact, Chris took a deep breath and placed his hands on its smooth, otherworldly surface. Immediately, energy coursed through him, more powerful than anything he had ever experienced. It felt like every atom in his body was being pulled apart and slammed back together. Through gritted teeth, Chris managed to speak. "I can contain it, buy you time, figure out how to shut it down." As the assembled scientists watched in awe, Chris became a conduit for the artifact's immense power. His indestructible body glowed with awe-inspiring energy, a human lightning rod channeling forces that could tear a planet apart. Dr. Rodriguez snapped into action. "Quick, we need to analyze the energy flow while he's containing it. This might be our only chance to understand how to neutralize it." As the scientists raced against time, Chris stood at the center of the maelstrom, his body the only thing standing between the Tholian homeworld and total destruction. The fate of two species hung in the balance, with Chris's unprecedented abilities pushed to their absolute limit. In orbit, aboard the HSS Invincible, Captain Drake watched the readings from the planet's surface with a mixture of awe and concern. "Hold on, Chris," he muttered. "Just hold on a little longer." Longer. The energy coursing through Chris's body intensified, causing his muscles to strain against the overwhelming force. He gritted his teeth, fighting to maintain his grip on the artifact as it pulsed with increasing power. "We need to act fast," Dr. Rodriguez called out, her fingers flying across her data pad. "Chris's cellular structure is changing rapidly. I've never seen anything like this before." Commander Thorne's voice crackled over the comm system, urgent and tense. "We've got company. Hostile Tholian forces approaching the research center. Establishing defensive perimeter now." As if on cue, the ground shook with a series of explosions. The research team stumbled, struggling to maintain their footing as crystal shards rained down from the ceiling. "Thea," Chris managed to grunt, his body glowing with an intense blue light. "I need your help." Without hesitation, Thea moved closer to Chris, her crystalline form vibrating with willpower. She observed the pulsing artifact, her mind racing through centuries of Tholian knowledge. "The energy patterns," she said, her voice tinged with awe. "They match our ancient harmonics. I might be able to help stabilize the flow." Outside, the sound of energy weapons and human firearms created a cacophony of battle. Commander Thorne's voice came through the comm again, breathless but resolute. "We're holding them off for now, but they're pressing hard. How's it going in there?" Dr. Rodriguez glanced up from her instruments, her face a mix of concern and fascination. "Chris's body is adapting to the artifact's energy. It's like his indestructibility is evolving, but the process is putting immense strain on his system." As she spoke, Chris let out a pained groan. His body flickered, momentarily becoming transparent before solidifying again. The artifact's glow intensified, sending out waves of energy that caused the surrounding crystals to resonate. Thea, seeing Chris's struggle, began to manipulate the crystal formations around them. Her movements were precise, almost dance-like, as she used her knowledge of Tholian architecture to create a harmonizing resonance. "That's it," Chris gasped, feeling the energy flow smoothing. "Keep going, Thea." Suddenly, a massive tremor rocked the facility. The sound of shattering crystal filled the air as a section of the wall collapsed, revealing the battle raging outside. Through the newly formed opening, they could see Commander Thorne and his Marines engaged in fierce combat with a group of Tholian extremists. "Fall back," Thorne shouted, firing his weapon with deadly accuracy. "Protect the artifact chamber at all costs." As the Marines retreated, an imposing Tholian figure stepped forward. Major Cracks, his crystalline form glinting with malice, surveyed the scene before him. "Surrender the artifact," he demanded, his translated voice filled with contempt. "Its power belongs to the Tholian people, not to human interlopers." Before anyone could respond, a blinding light filled the chamber. Chris's body pulsed with energy, sending out waves that stabilized the crumbling crystal structures around them. The human's eyes glowed with an otherworldly blue light as he turned to face Major Cracks. "This power doesn't belong to anyone," Chris said, his voice resonating with newfound strength. "It's too dangerous to be controlled." Major Cracks raised his weapon, but before he could fire, another tremor shook the facility. This time, however, it wasn't from the planet's instability. A massive shadow fell over the battlefield as the HSS Invincible decloaked directly above them. Captain Drake's voice boomed through all communication channels. "This is Captain Drake of the HSS Invincible. We're deploying our prototype energy absorption device. All personnel, brace for potential energy fluctuations." A beam of light shot down from the ship, enveloping the research center. The prototype device, a sleek cylinder overflowing with advanced technology, descended into the artifact chamber. Dr. Rodriguez rushed to the device, her fingers flying over its controls. "If we can synchronize this with Chris's energy output, we might be able to fully contain the artifact's power." As she worked, Chris felt a change within himself. The energy flowing through him was no longer chaotic and overwhelming. Instead, it felt controlled, almost familiar. With a thought, he directed a surge of power towards the unstable section of the facility, instantly repairing the damage. Major Cracks and his forces watched in stunned silence as Chris demonstrated his new abilities. The human's body glowed with power, crystal formations reshaping themselves at his will. Minister Lyra's voice cut through the tension, broadcasted from a nearby command center. "This is Minister Lyra to all Tholian forces. Stand down immediately. We are calling for an immediate ceasefire." For a moment, it seemed Major Cracks would ignore the order. But as he looked from Chris to the Invincible looming overhead, he slowly lowered his weapon. "This isn't over," he growled, before ordering his forces to retreat. As the sounds of battle faded, Chris turned his attention back to the artifact. With Thea's harmonics guiding him and the prototype device supporting his efforts, he began to systematically neutralize the dangerous energy emissions. The planet's tremor subsided, and the collapsing crystal formation stabilized. However, as the immediate danger passed, Chris could sense that the artifact's core remained active. There were depths to its power that they had only begun to understand. Dr. Rodriguez approached Chris, her eyes wide with excitement and trepidation. The readings we're getting from you and the artifact. Chris, this could change everything we know about energy manipulation and cellular adaptation. Chris nodded, feeling the weight of this new discovery. We've stopped the crisis, but I have a feeling our work here is just beginning. As human and Tholian forces began to stand down, the artifact pulsed once more, as if in agreement. Whatever mysteries it held, whatever powers it had awakened in Chris, one thing was clear. The relationship between humans and Tholians would never be the same. The same as before. Whatever mysteries the artifact held, whatever powers it had awakened in Chris, the relationship between humans and Tholians would never be the same. Yet, as the immediate crisis subsided, a new chapter was about to unfold. As Chris released his grip on the artifact, the intense blue glow that had enveloped him didn't fade entirely. Instead, it seemed to sink into his skin, leaving behind a faint, pulsating luminescence. He flexed his fingers, feeling a surge of energy coursing through his body. "Chris," Thea's voice was filled with concern and awe. "Are you all right?" Before he could respond, Chris's enhanced reflexes kicked in. In a blur of motion, he caught a falling piece of crystal that had dislodged from the ceiling, moving faster than any human should be capable of. Dr. Rodriguez's eyes widened. "Incredible," she breathed, already reaching for her scanner. "Chris, I need to run some tests immediately. The artifact seems to have altered your cellular structure even further." Outside the research center, the sounds of conflict were dying down. Commander Thorne's voice crackled over the comm system. "Perimeter secure. We've detained Major Cracks and his followers. Minister Lyra is on her way to interrogate them personally." Captain Drake's voice joined in. "Excellent work, everyone. Chris, Dr. Rodriguez, what's your status?" "Captain," Chris replied, his voice steady despite the strange sensations coursing through him. "The artifact's been contained, but it's done something to me. I'm different." "Understood. We'll need a full report. In the meantime, I'm initiating a planet-wide broadcast. The Tholians need to know what happened here today." As Drake's voice echoed across the Tholian world, offering human assistance in the ongoing stabilization efforts, Chris submitted himself to Dr. Rodriguez's battery of tests. The research center buzzed with activity, human and Tholian scientists working side by side to understand the events that had transpired. Suddenly, alarms blared from the artifact chamber. Dr. Rodriguez rushed to her instruments, her face a mask of concentration. The artifact. It's emitting a new type of energy signature. There's a pattern to it, almost like it's trying to communicate, Chris finished, feeling a strange resonance within himself. As the team scrambled to analyze the new emissions, Chris's vision blurred. In a flash, he saw glimpses of towering crystal cities, advanced technology beyond anything humans or Tholians had achieved, and beings of pure energy. The vision faded as quickly as it had come, leaving him gasping. "Chris," Thea was at his side instantly. "What did you see?" He described the vision, watching as the scientists exchanged meaningful glances. "We need to decipher these signals," Dr. Rodriguez declared. "Whatever the artifact is trying to tell us, it could be crucial." Thea's crystalline form shimmered as an idea struck her. "The planet's crystal network," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "We could use it to amplify the artifact signals. It might help us understand the message faster. And potentially trigger another round of geological instability," Commander Thorne pointed out as he entered the chamber, his uniform covered in crystal dust. Before they could debate further, Captain Drake's urgent voice came through the comm. "We've got a situation up here. Long-range sensors have detected multiple unidentified vessels heading straight for Tholian space. They're moving fast, and their design matches nothing in our databases. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Chris felt a weight settle on his shoulders. The artifact, his transformation, the approaching ships, it couldn't be a coincidence. "Captain," he said, his voice firm with dedication, "I need to get out there. If these ships are connected to the artifact, my new abilities might give us an edge in understanding their intentions." "Agreed," Drake replied. "I'm having a Tholian scout ship prep for you now. It's been modified to accommodate a human pilot." As Chris prepared for his mission, the research center transformed into a hive of activity. Dr. Rodriguez led the decryption efforts, working tirelessly to unravel the artifact's message. Thea coordinated with Tholian engineers, carefully planning how to use the planet's crystal network without risking further instability. Commander Thorne oversaw the fortification of key locations across the planet's surface, human marines working alongside Tholian security forces. In orbit, the HSS Invincible took up a defensive position, joined by the remaining ships of the Tholian fleet. As Chris boarded the modified Tholian scout ship, he caught sight of his reflection in the crystalline viewport. His skin shimmered with that faint blue glow, a constant reminder of how much had changed in such a short time. He thought of the vision he'd seen, of the advanced civilization and the potential threat it hinted at. "Ready for launch," he reported, settling into the alien controls that somehow felt familiar to his transformed body. "Godspeed, Chris." Captain Drake's voice came through clear as the docking bay doors opened. "Find out what we're dealing with. The fate of 2 worlds may depend on it." As the scout ship accelerated away from the Tholian homeworld, Chris could feel the artifact's energy humming within him, almost as if it was guiding him toward the unknown vessels. Behind him, the combined forces of humans and Tholians prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead, their newfound alliance about to face its greatest test. The stars streaked by as Chris pushed the ship to its limits, racing toward a confrontation that would shape the future of both species. Whatever awaited him out there in the depths of space, he knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. As Chris guided the Tholian scout ship away from the planet, the artifact's energy thrummed within him, an internal compass pointing towards the unknown. He adjusted the unfamiliar controls with surprising ease, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to navigate the crystalline vessel as if he'd been piloting it for years. "Starburst to base. We're clear of the atmosphere," Chris reported, his voice steady despite the weight of the mission. "Copy that, Starburst." Captain Drake's voice crackled through the comm. "We've got some developments here you need to know about." As Chris listened intently, Dr. Rodriguez's excited voice joined the channel. "Chris, we've had a breakthrough with the artifact signals. They're not random emissions. It's a language, a mathematical one." Chris felt a jolt of recognition. "Like prime numbers?" "Exactly," Rodriguez confirmed. "This suggests an incredibly advanced civilization, possibly still active somewhere out there." The implications of this discovery settled over Chris as he pushed the Starburst further into space. He glanced at his small team, a mix of human and Tholian specialists, each chosen for their unique skills. Their faces reflected a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. "Captain," Chris said, "what's the status planet-side?" Drake's voice grew serious. "Commander Thorne has been fortifying key locations. He's created a defense system that combines both our technologies. As for our fleet, we're in position with the Tholian ships. The Invincible is providing tactical data to coordinate our efforts." Chris nodded, impressed by the rapid organization of their combined forces. As they ventured deeper into space, he felt a familiar tingling at the base of his skull. The world around him blurred, replaced by a vivid vision. He saw a massive structure, a megastructure that dwarfed planets. It pulsed with energy, its surface a complex network of crystalline formations. Surrounding it were ships, the very ships now approaching Tholian space. The vision faded, leaving Chris gasping. "I saw them," he said to his team. "The ships, they're coming from some kind of enormous structure. It's beyond anything we've ever encountered." As the team processed this information, their sensors pinged. An unknown object was approaching rapidly. "Probe detected," announced Kira, the human sensor specialist. "Its design matches nothing in our database." Chris felt the energy within him surge. Acting on instinct, he reached out with his mind, manipulating the energy field around the starburst. The ship shimmered and seemed to fade from view. "Did we just go invisible?" asked Zorn, the Tholian engineer, his crystalline form vibrating with surprise. "Some kind of stealth field," Chris confirmed, marveling at his newfound ability. "Let's see if we can get a closer look at that probe without it noticing us." They maneuvered closer, observing the alien device as it scanned the system. Its focus seemed to be on crystal formations, particularly those similar to the Tholian homeworld. "It's collecting data," Kira reported, her eyes glued to her console, "sending everything back to base for analysis." As they watched the probe work, another transmission came through from the planet. Dr. Rodriguez's voice was filled with excitement and a hint of trepidation. "Chris, we've made another discovery," she said. "The artifact. We think it was designed to interface with specific genetic markers that are present in human DNA." The implications hit Chris like a physical blow. "Are you saying the artifact's creators might have had a hand in human evolution?" Rodriguez confirmed. "It could explain our species' unusual resilience and adaptability." Before Chris could fully process this revelation, space itself seemed to ripple before them. Massive ships materialized, their crystalline structures defying conventional design. Chris strained to maintain the stealth field around the starburst as they witnessed the arrival of the mysterious fleet. "My God!" whispered Kira, her eyes wide with awe and fear. The ships were colossal, their surfaces a maze of shifting crystal patterns. They moved with impossible grace for their size, arranging themselves in a formation that spoke of both military precision and artistic beauty. Chris felt the artifact's energy pulse within him, resonating with the alien vessels. He realized with startling clarity that they stood at the precipice of a moment that would redefine humanity's place in the universe. "Starburst to base," Chris said, his voice tight with tension. "We have visual on the unknown ships. Prepare for potential first contact. This is not a drill." As the starburst hung in space, hidden from the alien fleet's sensors, Chris and his team watched and waited. The next move, whether it came from the mysterious new arrivals or the combined human-Tholian forces, would shape the future of both their species and perhaps the entire galaxy. The unidentified vessels loomed closer, their crystalline structures refracting starlight in mesmerizing patterns. Chris's enhanced senses thrummed with energy as he strained to maintain the stealth field around the starburst. His skin pulsed with an intense blue glow, casting eerie shadows across the ship's interior. The team watched in awe as the massive alien fleet materialized fully before them, dwarfing their small scout ship. Kira's fingers flew across her console, gathering data at a furious pace. "These ships," she breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. "Their crystal composition. It's similar to the Tholian formations, but far more advanced." Zorn chittered in agreement, his crystalline form vibrating with excitement. "The structural integrity, the energy patterns. It's like nothing I've ever seen." Chris felt a resonance deep within himself, a connection between the artifact's energy flowing through him and the alien vessels. He made a split-second decision. "We need to make contact," he announced, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "I'm going to reveal our position." With careful concentration, Chris manipulated the energy field surrounding the starburst. The ship's cloaking slowly faded, revealing their presence to the alien armada. The response was immediate. A beam of crystalline energy shot out from the largest alien ship, enveloping the starburst in a cocoon of shimmering light. Chris tensed, ready for anything, but the beam caused no damage. Instead, complex data patterns began streaming into the ship's computer systems. Chris's mind raced as he instinctively began interpreting parts of the transmission. "They're trying to communicate," he realized aloud. Back on the Tholian homeworld, alarms blared across the research center. Dr. Rodriguez rushed to her instruments, her face a mask of concentration. "The artifact!" she shouted over the din. "It's responding to the alien presence." Energy surged from the device, perfectly matching the patterns transmitted by the alien fleet. The sudden release of power sent shockwaves through the planet's crystal structures, threatening to undo their recent stabilization efforts. Commander Thorne's voice crackled over the comm system. "We've got tremors across the northern hemisphere. I'm dispatching engineering teams to reinforce critical areas." As chaos threatened to engulf the planet, a new voice cut through the noise. "This is Admiral Jean. All Tholian vessels, maintain your positions. Do not engage unless directly threatened." The arrival of the respected Tholian officer brought a sense of calm to the nervous crews. Captain Drake, commanding the HSS Invincible, quickly opened a channel to coordinate their efforts. "Admiral Jean, this is Captain Drake. We're detecting a second wave of alien ships entering the system." "Confirmed, Captain," Jean replied, his voice steady. "They appear to be taking up defensive positions around the planet." Minister Lyra joined the conversation, her crystalline form shimmering with tension. "We need to understand their intentions. The fate of our world hangs in the balance." Aboard the Starburst, Chris and his team worked feverishly to decipher the alien transmission. Slowly, patterns emerged from the complex data stream. I think I've got it," Chris said, his brow furrowed in concentration. "They call themselves the Crystalline Collective. They're saying something about lost children." Kira's eyes widened as she processed the information. "They're interested in both the Tholian homeworld and you, Chris. It's like they see you both as part of their civilization somehow." As this information was relayed back to the planet, Dr. Rodriguez's voice came through, filled with excitement and trepidation. "Chris, we've made a breakthrough. The artifact's energy signatures, the alien technology. We think the Crystalline Collective may have seeded multiple worlds with their technology eons ago, including Earth and the Tholian homeworld." The implications of this revelation sent shockwaves through the assembled human and Tholian forces. Minister Lyra's voice trembled as she spoke. This could change everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe." Chris felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. He was uniquely positioned to communicate with the aliens, potentially holding the key to peaceful first contact. But the overwhelming technological superiority of the Crystalline Collective kept everyone on edge. As he prepared to attempt further communication, Chris couldn't shake the feeling that they stood on the precipice of a new era. Whether it would bring interstellar cooperation or galactic conflict remained to be seen. The Starburst hung suspended in space, a tiny mote surrounded by the vast crystalline fleet. Chris took a deep breath, steeling himself for what came next. With a thought, he directed a burst of energy towards the alien vessels, attempting to establish a more direct line of communication. The response was immediate. A holographic projection flickered to life in the center of the Starburst bridge, revealing a being of pure energy encased in an intricate crystalline shell. Its voice, when it spoke, resonated not just through the ship's speakers, but through Chris's very being. "Children of the forgotten seeds," the being intoned, its words translating seamlessly in Chris's mind. "Long have we searched for you. The echoes of our legacy." The being's form shimmered, its crystalline structure refracting light in mesmerizing patterns. "You, child of Earth, bear the mark of our ancient designs." Chris felt a resonance deep within his body, the artifact's energy pulsing in harmony with the alien presence. He focused on maintaining the connection, translating the complex energy patterns into words his team could understand. "They recognize something in me," Chris explained, his voice tight with concentration. "Something connected to their past." Kira's fingers flew across her console, correlating data streams. "Chris, your vitals are spiking. Whatever you're doing, it's having a physical effect on you." Before Chris could respond, the alien being continued. "We have returned to reclaim what was lost, to prevent a catastrophe that threatens the very fabric of space-time." As Chris relayed this information to his team, the starburst shuddered. Outside, the massive crystalline ships began to move, their formations shifting to surround the Tholian homeworld. On the planet's surface, chaos erupted. The ground trembled, crystal formations vibrating with increasing intensity. Commander Thorne's voice crackled over the comm system, his tone urgent. "We've got a situation down here. The planet's going haywire." Dr. Rodriguez's excited voice joined the channel. "Chris, the artifact's energy output has tripled. It's triggering some kind of chain reaction in the planet's crust." As if in response to her words, the planet's surface began to transform. Massive crystalline structures burst from the ground, towering spires that reached toward the stars. The newly stabilized regions buckled under the strain, forcing Thorne to rapidly reassess his defensive strategies. "All units, fall back to secondary positions," Thorne ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Priority is protecting civilian areas from these emerging structures." Aboard the HSS Invincible, Captain Drake watched the unfolding scene with growing concern. The rising crystal towers had drastically altered the battlefield, compromising their carefully planned orbital positions. "Helm, adjust our course," Drake commanded. "Use those new towers for cover. We can't risk being caught exposed if this turns hot." As the human and Tholian forces scrambled to adapt, a new voice joined the command channel. "This is Major Marcus Graves, military attaché to the Tholian government. Admiral Jean has requested my assistance in coordinating our combined forces." Chris, still linked to the crystalline collective, felt a sudden surge of energy course through his body. He gasped, stumbling back from the holographic projection. Zorn rushed to steady him, the Tholian engineer's crystalline form vibrating with concern. "Chris, your arm!" Kira exclaimed, pointing at his skin. Chris looked down to see small crystal formations beginning to sprout along his forearm. They pulsed with a soft blue light, in sync with the energy flowing through him. "What's happening to me?" Chris whispered, a mix of awe and fear in his voice. The alien being's voice resonated in his mind. "You are evolving, child, embracing the potential we seeded within your kind eons ago." As Chris grappled with this revelation, Dr. Rodriguez's voice cut through the confusion. "Chris, I've made a breakthrough. These emerging structures, they're not random. They're part of an ancient planetary defense system." The implications of her discovery rippled through the command structure. On the planet's surface, Minister Lyra found herself besieged by questions from various Tholian factions. The revelation of their world's connection to the crystalline collective had sparked a fierce debate about Tholian identity and their place in the galaxy. "We must remain united in the face of this crisis," Lyra urged, her crystalline form shimmering with intensity. "Our world's past does not dictate our future." Back on the starburst, Chris forced himself to focus through the strange sensations coursing through his body. He reached out once more to the crystalline collective, seeking answers. "Why have you really come here?" he asked, his voice strained with effort. The alien being's response sent a chill through the ship. Within the core of this world lies a component crucial to preventing a catastrophe that threatens countless star systems. We must retrieve it, or all will be lost. As Chris relayed this information, the newly emerged defense system suddenly sprang to life. Massive energy beams shot from the crystal towers, forming a protective barrier around the planet. The Crystalline Collective's fleet halted its advance, caught off guard by the ancient technology's activation. Admiral Jean's voice cut through the tension. All ships, hold your positions. Do not engage unless directly threatened. In the tense silence that followed, Chris felt the weight of countless lives resting on his shoulders. The crystal growths on his arm pulsed with renewed intensity, a physical manifestation of the monumental decision that lay before them. "We need to act," Chris said, his voice firm despite the uncertainty churning within him. "If what they're saying is true, we can't afford to turn them away. But we can't simply hand over control of the planet either." As the combined human and Tholian forces grappled with this dilemma, the Crystalline Collective waited, their massive ships looming just beyond the planet's newly activated defenses. The fate of not just the Tholian homeworld, but potentially the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. Chris looked out at the shimmering barrier surrounding the planet, then down at the crystal formation spreading across his skin. He knew that whatever came next would change everything. The true test of humanity's place in the cosmos was about to begin. The true test of humanity's place in the cosmos was about to unfold. Chris took a deep breath, steadying himself as he faced the assembled team. "We need to act now," he said, his voice firm despite the crystal formations pulsing along his arm. "The Crystalline Collective claims there's a crucial component in the planet's core. If they're right, we can't afford to ignore this threat." Admiral Jean nodded, his crystalline form shimmering with tension. "Agreed. I've assembled a specialized task force to accompany you, Chris. We'll need both human and Tholian expertise for this mission." As if on cue, a group of Tholian geologists and human engineers entered the room, each carrying equipment designed for the extreme conditions they would face. Among them stood Major Marcus Graves, his expression grim but determined. "We've prepared a modified drilling vessel," Graves explained, pulling up a holographic schematic. "It's designed to withstand the intense pressures and temperatures we'll encounter on our descent." Chris studied the vessel's design, noting the reinforced hull and advanced propulsion systems. "How long until we're ready to launch?" "1 hour," Graves replied. "Dr. Rodriguez and her team are working on a stabilization method as we speak." On cue, Dr. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm system. "Chris, we've developed a network of energy dampeners using a combination of our technology and Tholian crystal formations. We're deploying them around the planet, now to mitigate any geomagnetic disturbances during the extraction process." As the team made final preparations, a shimmering portal opened in the center of the room. From it emerged a being composed of shifting crystal fragments, its form vaguely humanoid. The air crackled with energy as it spoke. "I am ZYXRA, emissary of the Crystalline Collective," the being announced, its voice resonating on multiple frequencies. "I will accompany your team to ensure the safe retrieval of the core component." Tension filled the room as humans and Tholians alike regarded the alien with a mix of awe and suspicion. Chris stepped forward, extending a hand in greeting. As he did so, the crystals on his arm pulsed in sync with ZYXRA's form. "Welcome aboard," Chris said, masking his own unease. "We'll need all the help we can get." The next hour passed in a blur of activity. On the surface, Commander Thorne coordinated with Major Graves to establish a defensive perimeter around the drilling site. Human and Tholian troops moved in tandem, their weapons calibrated to repel any potential threats from the planet's increasingly unstable crystal structures. As the team boarded the drilling vessel, Chris felt a mix of anticipation and dread. He took his place at the control panel, the crystal growths on his arm interfacing seamlessly with the ship's systems. "All systems checked," Kira announced from her station. "We're ready for descent." With a nod from Admiral Jean, Chris initiated the launch sequence. The vessel shuddered as it burrowed into the planet's crust, leaving the relative safety of the surface behind. The descent was treacherous from the start. Massive crystal formations loomed in their path, threatening to crush the vessel. Chris reached out with his mind, drawing on his newfound abilities to create protective energy fields around the ship. "Unstable pocket ahead," one of the Tholian geologists called out. "Brace for impact." Chris gritted his teeth, focusing all his energy on maintaining the protective field. The vessel shuddered as it passed through the volatile area, but emerged unscathed. Beads of sweat formed on Chris's brow, and he noticed with alarm that the crystal growths had spread further up his arm. As they pushed deeper into the planet's interior, they encountered vast caverns filled with dormant machinery. The ancient technology hummed to life as they passed, responding to Chris's presence. "Fascinating," ZYXRA observed, its crystalline form shifting in excitement. "These are maintenance systems left by our ancestors. They can guide us to the core." Following the newly activated pathways, the team made swift progress. But with each level they descended, the strain on Chris intensified. He could feel the immense energies of the planet coursing through him, threatening to overwhelm his human physiology. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the vessel. Massive energy spike detected. Kira shouted, "We're approaching some kind of central chamber." The drilling vessel emerged into a colossal spherical room, suspended in the heart of the planet. At its center floated a pulsating crystal entity, far larger and more complex than anything they had encountered before. "Attention, intruders!" A thunderous voice reverberated through their minds. "I am the guardian of the core. You have breached the sanctum of this world. State your purpose or be destroyed." Chris stood, his body trembling with the effort of containing the surging energies within him. He locked eyes with the immense crystal being, feeling the weight of countless millennia in its gaze. "We seek the core component," Chris declared, his voice echoing with newfound power. "The fate of countless worlds hangs in the balance." The Guardian's form shimmered, tendrils of energy reaching out to probe Chris's mind. "You bear the mark of our creators," it observed, "but that alone does not grant you the right to claim what lies here." Chris felt himself drawn into a mental battle with the Guardian, their wills clashing in a spectacular display of energy. The other team members watched in awe as Chris's body became a conduit for immense power, arcs of crystal blue lightning dancing across his skin. While Chris engaged the Guardian, ZYXRA made a move toward the core. Its actions triggered a violent response from the chamber's defenses. The room began to shake, crystal spikes erupting from the walls. "We need to stabilize the chamber," Graves shouted, rallying the human and Tholian engineers. They worked frantically to reinforce the structure, but the Guardian's power was overwhelming. On the surface, Dr. Rodriguez's energy dampeners struggled against the massive surge from the core. The crystal towers that had emerged earlier began to resonate, creating a harmonic effect that threatened to tear the planet apart. As the situation reached a critical point, Chris made a fateful realization. His evolved physiology was the key to interfacing with both the Guardian and the core component. There was only one way to stabilize the extraction process and save the planet. "I have to merge with the core," Chris announced, his voice strained but resolute. "It's the only way." Before anyone could object, Chris began to dissolve into pure energy, his consciousness expanding to encompass the planet's crystal network. As his individual identity faded, Chris felt the immense power of the core flowing through him, becoming him. The chamber stabilized, the Guardian's defenses withdrawing. But the cost was high. Where Chris had stood, only a swirling vortex of crystal energy remained, pulsing in sync with the planet's core. Kira reached out toward the vortex, her voice choked with emotion. "Chris, can you hear me?" The energy coalesced briefly into a familiar form. Chris's voice, now layered with otherworldly harmonics, echoed through the chamber. "I'm here, but I'm also everywhere. We need to move quickly. The core component. I can guide you to it now." As the team prepared to follow Chris's guidance, the full implications of his sacrifice began to sink in. They had come seeking a way to protect the universe, but the price of that salvation was proving to be higher than any of them had imagined. With Chris now merged with the planet systems, the next phase of their perilous mission was about to begin. The fate of not just the Tholian homeworld, but countless other star systems, hung in the balance as they moved deeper into the heart of the planet. The chamber's energy surged, enveloping Chris's form in a blinding light. As his physical body dissolved, his consciousness expanded, intertwining with the planet's ancient crystal network. The team watched in awe as Chris's essence spread through the core, his voice echoing with newfound power and knowledge. The component. "It's not what we thought," Chris's voice reverberated, now layered with harmonics that resonated through the chamber. "It's an energy matrix, encoded within the planet's very structure." Kira's eyes widened as she processed this information. How do we extract something like that? Before Chris could respond, a massive tremor shook the chamber. The crystals lining the walls pulsed with an intense blue light, matching the glow that had emanated from Chris's transformed body. "The planet's responding to Chris's merger," one of the Tholian geologists announced, his crystalline form vibrating with tension. "The entire crystal network is activating." On the surface, Dr. Rodriguez's team scrambled to adjust their energy dampeners. The devices, overwhelmed by the sudden power surge, began to overload. One by one, they shattered, sending shockwaves rippling across the planet's crust. Commander Thorne's voice crackled over the comm system, urgency evident in his tone. "We're detecting massive geological instabilities up here. What's happening down there?" Major Graves responded, his voice tight with concentration, as he worked to stabilize their position. "Chris has merged with the planet's core. We're dealing with unprecedented energy levels." As the extraction team grappled with the changing situation, ZYXRA moved towards the swirling vortex of energy that now represented Chris and the planet's core. The crystalline being's form shifted and elongated, attempting to interface with the planet's systems. "We must act quickly," ZYXRA intoned, its voice resonating on multiple frequencies. "The fate of countless worlds depends on our success." Suddenly, a powerful force pushed ZYXRA back. The Guardian of the Core, now integrated with Chris's consciousness, manifested as a shimmering barrier between the team and the core. "Your intentions may be pure," Chris's voice echoed, tinged with the Guardian's ancient wisdom, "but we cannot allow direct interference. The balance is too delicate." In orbit, Captain Drake observed the unfolding chaos with growing concern. The protective barrier created by the Crystalline Collective's fleet began to fluctuate, creating brief windows of communication with the surface. "This is Drake to all teams," he broadcast, seizing the opportunity. "We're coordinating evacuation efforts on the surface. Extraction team, what's your status?" As Drake relayed information between the various groups, Chris's expanded consciousness delved deeper into the planet's history. Vast stores of knowledge left behind by the Crystalline Collective flooded his mind. "The energy matrix," Chris communicated to the team, his thoughts manifesting as shimmering glyphs in the air around them. "It's not just part of the planet. It's intertwined with the Tholian species itself. Extracting it could have profound consequences for their entire race." Dr. Rodriguez's voice cut through the tension, her analysis adding another layer of complexity to their dilemma. "Chris is right. Our readings show the matrix is genetically linked to the Tholian physiology. Removing it could alter their species on a fundamental level." The human members of the team exchanged worried glances, while their Tholian counterparts vibrated with a mix of fear and anticipation. "We can't just change an entire species," Kira argued, her voice rising with emotion. "There has to be another way." Major Graves shook his head, his expression grim. "The fate of the galactic realm is at stake. We may not have a choice. As the debate raged, Chris's influence over the planet's systems grew. The ancient defensive structures began to shift and reconfigure, forming a massive crystal lattice that extended from the core to the surface. The new formation stabilized the geological instabilities, but it also began to alter the planet's atmosphere and gravitational field. Admiral Jean's voice cut through the chaos, his tone brooking no argument. The window for extraction is closing. We must act now, regardless of the consequences. Proceed with the removal of the energy matrix. The order sent shockwaves through the team. Several Tholian officers recoiled, their crystalline forms clouding with distress. "This is our homeworld, our very essence," one of them protested. "We cannot allow this violation." As tensions mounted, the planet's crystal towers emitted a high-frequency signal that penetrated the crystalline collective's containment barrier. Complex data about the unfolding events broadcast across nearby star systems, adding another layer of urgency to their actions. Chris's consciousness, spread throughout the planet's systems, felt the weight of the impending decision. He could sense the fear and purpose of his team, the rising panic on the surface, and the watchful presence of the crystalline collective in orbit. "We're out of time," Chris communicated, his thoughts resonating through the crystal chamber. Initiating extraction sequence. The core chamber erupted into a maelstrom of energy. Crystals pulsed with blinding light, and arcs of power danced between the walls. The team braced themselves, their equipment straining against the onslaught of raw energy. As the extraction process began, Chris guided the separation of the energy matrix from the planet's crystal structure. He could feel the ancient power flowing through him, reshaping his consciousness in ways he couldn't fully comprehend. The fate of the Tholian species, the success of their mission, and the potential for galactic peace all hinged on the next few moments. As the energy matrix began to detach, a shudder ran through the planet's core, resonating across the entire world. In that crucial moment, as the team stood on the precipice of irreversible change, a new signal pierced through the chaos. It originated from the surface, where Minister Lyra and the newly emerged faction led by Krilzar had made a fateful decision. The signal carried a message that would alter the course of their mission and potentially reshape the future of multiple civilizations across the galaxy. The team held their breath, waiting for the message to arrive. As the signal penetrated the chaotic energy swirling around them, the core chamber erupted into a maelstrom of power. Crystals pulsed with blinding light, and arcs of energy danced between the walls. The team braced themselves, their equipment straining against the onslaught of raw power. Chris's consciousness, fully merged with the planet's crystal network, guided the extraction process with newfound precision. His thoughts reverberated through the chamber, initiating final phase. Brace yourselves. The energy matrix began to separate from the planet's structure, causing visible distortions in the chamber's walls. Kira watched in awe as reality seemed to bend and warp around them. Suddenly, the guardian of the core activated a hidden failsafe mechanism. Ancient machinery emerged from the chamber walls, creating a shimmering containment field around the extraction site. "Unexpected development," Chris's voice echoed, tinged with surprise. "Adapting strategy." Major Graves barked orders, ZYXRA, interface with that containment field. "Dr. Rodriguez, we need power redistribution, now." As the team scrambled to adjust, the effects of the extraction became immediately apparent on the surface. The crystal towers that had emerged earlier began to retract into the ground, causing seismic disturbances across the planet. Commander Thorne's voice crackled over the comm. "Extraction team, be advised. We're experiencing major geological instability up here, intensifying evacuation efforts." In orbit, Captain Drake observed a new development. The crystalline collective's fleet began to change formation, creating a massive energy funnel directed at the planet. The sight was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. "Drake to extraction team," he called urgently. The collective is intervening. Their actions are stabilizing the process, but increasing strain on the planet's structure. Back in the core chamber, ZYXRA interface with the ancient containment field, its crystalline form shifting and elongating. The failsafe is not just containment, it reported. It's a data buffer. Massive amounts of information are flowing through it. As if in response to ZYXRA's discovery, Chris's merged consciousness made a startling revelation. The Matrix. It contains complete historical and cultural records of the crystalline collective, and more. Genetic information, evolution potential for both humans and Tholians. The implications of this discovery sent shockwaves through the team. Kira's eyes widened. Chris, that information could change everything. What do we do? Before Chris could respond, Dr. Rodriguez's voice cut in. Team, we have a problem. The extraction is causing dangerous fluctuations in the planet's magnetic field. The Tholian atmosphere is at risk of destabilizing. We need a solution, Doctor, Graves demanded, his voice tense. I'm reconfiguring the remaining energy dampeners, Rodriguez replied, creating a temporary magnetic shield around the planet. It won't hold for long, but it should buy us some time. As the extraction continued, the human and Tholian members of the team worked in tandem to manage the increasingly unstable energy flows. They used a combination of human technology and Tholian crystal manipulation techniques to channel the excess energy into hastily assembled containment devices. The chamber shuddered violently, and a warning klaxon blared through their comms. Admiral Jean's voice cut through the chaos. Extraction team, we're receiving reports of widespread seismic activity. Minister Lyra has activated an experimental Tholian defense system. It's creating energy channels across the planet's surface to distribute the extraction's impact. The energy matrix finally detached from the planet's core, hovering unstably in the chamber. Its power, awe-inspiring by the combined efforts of the team and Chris's consciousness, threatened to overwhelm them at any moment. Suddenly, long-dormant machines and structures began to rise from hidden chambers throughout the planet. The ancient crystalline collective technology, scattered across the world, was activating in response to the extraction. New variables detected. Chris's voice echoed, strained by the effort of maintaining control. Unknown technology activating planet-wide, attempting to integrate. The containment field around the energy matrix flickered dangerously. Arcs of power lashed out, scorching the chamber walls and forcing the team to take cover. We're losing containment, Graves shouted over the din. Chris, we need options. As the team fought to stabilize the extracted component, a new signal pierced through the chaos. It originated from the surface, where Commander Thorne's voice carried an urgent warning. Extraction team, be advised. A group led by Krilzar is marching towards the main drilling site. Their actions could disrupt the entire operation. We're dispatching security forces, but you need to finish the extraction now. The energy matrix pulsed ominously, its power barely held in check. The fate of multiple civilizations hung in the balance as the team prepared for the next critical phase of their mission. They knew that their actions in the coming moments would shape the future of the galaxy, but the path forward was fraught with danger and uncertainty. Chris's merged consciousness reached out, attempting to stabilize the matrix while simultaneously processing the vast stores of knowledge now flowing through him. The chamber trembled, crystals cracking under the strain of containing such immense power. As alarms blared and energy crackled around them, the team steeled themselves for what was to come. The true test of their mission was only just beginning. The true test of their mission was only just starting as the energy matrix detached completely from the planet's core, its raw power threatening to overwhelm them at any moment. Chris's merged consciousness surged through the planet's systems, exerting every ounce of his newfound influence to contain the volatile energy. The human and Tholian members of the extraction team moved with practiced precision, their earlier tensions forgotten in the face of imminent catastrophe. ZYXRA, I need you to modulate the containment field. Major Graves shouted over the din of alarms and crackling energy. Kira, reroute power from non-essential systems to boost the field's strength. The team worked in perfect synchronization, their combined expertise creating a delicate dance of technology and crystal manipulation. ZYXRA's crystalline form elongated and shifted, interfacing directly with the ancient machinery to fine-tune the containment protocols. Suddenly, Dr. Rodriguez's voice cut through their comms, urgent and alarmed. Team, we have a critical situation up here. I'm detecting a massive spike in radiation, levels emanating from the core. If we don't act fast, it could penetrate the surface and cause widespread devastation. Without missing a beat, Rodriguez continued. I'm improvising a radiation shield using a combination of Tholian crystals and our own tech. Stand by for deployment. In her lab on the surface, Rodriguez's fingers flew over holographic displays, making rapid calculations and adjustments. She grabbed fistfuls of Tholian crystals, arranging them in a complex pattern around a modified human energy emitter. With a final command, she activated the makeshift device. A shimmering field of energy expanded from the lab, racing through the planet's crust towards the extraction site. It enveloped the core chamber, just as another wave of radiation burst forth from the unstable matrix. The team felt the oppressive weight of the radiation dissipate as the shield took hold. Chris's voice echoed through their minds. Radiation levels dropping. Shield integrity holding at 92%. Well done, Dr. Rodriguez. In orbit, Captain Drake watched with a mix of awe and trepidation as the Crystalline Collective's fleet shifted into a new formation. The massive ships aligned themselves, creating a funnel of pure energy that stretched from their position to the planet's surface. Drake to extraction team, he called, his voice tense. The collective is intensifying their energy funnel. They're creating a direct conduit to your location. As if in response to Drake's warning, the core chamber filled with a blinding light. The energy funnel from the collective ships connected directly to the extracted matrix, siphoning off excess power and reducing the strain on the planet's structure. The immediate danger subsided, but new challenges arose. The increased energy flow caused visible distortions in the planet's atmosphere, creating brilliant auroras that danced across the sky. On the surface, Commander Thorne and his security forces faced an unexpected obstacle. The shifting crystal structures interfered with their transport ship's navigation systems, causing several to veer dangerously off course. This is Thorne, he broadcast to all channels. We're experiencing widespread navigation failures. All ships switch to manual control immediately. As the evacuation efforts threatened to descend into chaos, Thorne's eyes caught sight of the newly emerged crystal formations. An idea struck him. Listen up, he ordered his pilots. Use the crystal structures as natural beacons. Their resonance patterns are stable enough to guide us to safe landing zones. The pilots quickly adapted to Thorne's improvised solution, using the glowing crystals as waypoints to navigate the treacherous landscape. The evacuation resumed, albeit at a slower pace. Meanwhile, Minister Lyra's activation of the experimental Tholian defense system proved to be a crucial decision. A network of glowing energy channels spread across the planet's surface, distributing the extraction's impact and preventing any single area from bearing the full brunt of the process. However, the system's activation had an unforeseen consequence. Long-dormant Tholian biological processes began to awaken, tied intimately to their crystal-based physiology. Among Krilzar's group marching towards the main drilling site, several Tholians suddenly found themselves capable of manipulating nearby crystal formations with their minds. Krilzar himself stumbled as he felt a surge of power course through his crystalline body. With a mere thought, he caused a nearby formation to twist and grow, forming a makeshift barricade against Thorne's approaching security forces. Brothers and sisters, Krilzar called out, his voice resonating with newfound authority. Our world awakens. Feel its power flow through you. Back in the core chamber, ZYXRA made a startling discovery as the energy matrix began to stabilize. Holographic images flickered to life around them, projecting scenes from ancient crystalline collective civilizations. Incredible, ZYXRA whispered, its crystalline form vibrating with excitement. These are historical records. The collective, they faced a similar crisis on their homeworld. The Matrix was created as a failsafe. Admiral Jean's voice crackled over the comms. This discovery could change everything. I'm sending a team of historians to your location. We need to document these projections before they fade. As the extraction process neared its final stages, Chris's merged consciousness detected a new, potentially catastrophic development. The void left by the removed matrix was causing the planet's core to collapse in on itself. Warning! Chris's thoughts reverberated through the chamber. Planetary implosion imminent, estimating less than 2 hours before critical failure. In response to the looming threat, the ancient crystalline collective machinery throughout the planet began to move of its own accord. Guided by Chris's influence, the dormant machines formed a massive, interconnected network extending from the core to the surface. Dr. Rodriguez's voice cut through the tension. I might have a solution, but it's risky. We could use the awakened Tholian biological processes to generate a new, living crystal matrix. It could fill the void and stabilize the planet. Minister Lyra, listening in from her command center, understood the implications immediately. Such a process would require the participation of my people. It could change us forever. As Lyra prepared to address the Tholian population, Captain Drake's urgent message added a new layer of complexity to their already precarious situation. Long-range sensors are picking up multiple unidentified vessels entering the system at high speed, Drake reported. Unknown origin, but they seem to be drawn by our energy signatures. ETA, 30 minutes. The extraction team exchanged grim looks. Time was running out, and the fate of not just the Tholian homeworld, but potentially the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. They knew that their next actions would shape the course of history, for better or worse. With revitalized commitment, the team turned their attention to stabilizing the energy matrix and preparing for Dr. Rodriguez's daring plan. The chamber hummed with activity as human and Tholian alike worked to save a world and, perhaps, forge a new future for both their species. The true test of their mission was only just beginning. As the energy matrix pulsed ominously, threatening to tear apart the very fabric of the planet, Minister Lyra's voice rang out across the Tholian communication channels. Her words, filled with urgency and hope, reached every corner of the homeworld. My fellow Tholians, she began, her crystalline form vibrating with intensity. Our world stands on the brink of destruction. But in this darkest hour, we have been presented with an opportunity, not just to save ourselves, but to evolve beyond our wildest dreams. Lyra explained Dr. Rodriguez's plan, calling for volunteers to participate in the creation of a new living crystal matrix. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of Tholians, from the youngest crystals to the most ancient elders, stepped forward, their bodies humming with anticipation. In the core chamber, Chris's merged consciousness expanded, reaching out to the volunteers. His thoughts flowed through the ancient crystalline collective technology, creating a bridge between the Tholians and the planet systems. Initiating integration process, Chris's voice echoed through the minds of the extraction team. Tholian biological processes aligning with planetary crystal structures. Dr. Rodriguez, her face illuminated by the glow of holographic displays, worked feverishly to refine the integration process. The Tholian physiology is adapting faster than we anticipated, she reported, her voice filled with excitement. We might be able to stabilize the core sooner than expected. As the volunteers began to merge with the crystal structures, Massive spires erupted from the planet's surface. These towering formations of living crystal pulse with energy, forming a network of conduits that stretched from the core to the outer atmosphere. In orbit, Captain Drake observed the transformation with a mix of awe and trepidation. The HSS Invincible's sensors detected a new threat approaching rapidly. Multiple unidentified vessels entering the system, Drake announced, his voice tense. Unknown origin, but they're on an intercept course. Admiral Jean's response was immediate. Captain, coordinate with the Crystalline Collective Fleet. Form a defensive perimeter around the planet. Commander Thorne, deploy our ground-based defenses. On the surface, Thorne sprang into action. He directed a combination of human and Tholian forces to strategic positions, utilizing the newly awakened Tholian abilities to create crystal-based shield structures that arced into the sky. As the unknown vessels entered the system, a tense standoff ensued. Admiral Jean opened communication channels, his years of diplomatic experience evident in his measured tones. Unidentified vessels. This is Admiral Jean of the Human-Tholian Alliance. State your intentions. The response came in a cacophony of alien languages, quickly translated by the ship's computers. It became clear that these vessels represented a coalition of species affected by the impending galactic disaster, drawn to the massive energy signatures emanating from the Tholian homeworld. In the core chamber, the extraction team faced a new crisis as the energy matrix began to destabilize once more. ZYXRA, its crystalline form shimmering with ancient knowledge, proposed a daring solution. If we synchronize the matrix's energy frequency with that of the approaching ships, ZYXRA explained, we could create a harmonic resonance that would stabilize both the matrix and the planet's core. Major Graves nodded, his face grim with drive. Do it. As ZYXRA began the delicate process of frequency modulation, the planet shuddered. The ancient machinery reconfigured itself, causing controlled tremors that rippled across the surface. On the outskirts of the main drilling site, Krilzar and his followers felt the shift in the planet's energy. Their newly enhanced abilities allowed them to sense the precarious balance of forces at play. Brothers and sisters, Krilzar called out, his voice resonating with newfound authority. Our world needs us. Use your gifts to reinforce the crystal structures. With concentrated effort, Krilzar and his group began to manipulate the surrounding crystal formations, strengthening weak points and channeling energy to where it was needed most. In orbit, the situation intensified as several of the alien ships attempted to breach the defensive perimeter. Captain Drake, his tactical brilliance on full display, maneuvered the HSS Invincible with precision. All ships, execute Maneuver Theta 3, Drake ordered. Use the crystal shields as cover and outflank the aggressors. The human and crystalline collective ships moved in perfect synchronization, their combined firepower and the crystal shields successfully repelling the initial assault. As the battle raged in space, Chris's consciousness expanded further, encompassing not only the planet's systems, but also the newly formed living crystal matrix. This unprecedented level of control allowed him to make real-time adjustments to the planet's structure, counteracting the forces threatening to tear it apart. In the core chamber, Dr. Rodriguez made a startling discovery. The energy patterns of the human extraction team members had begun to resonate with the Tholian volunteers and the planet's crystal structures. This is incredible, she exclaimed, her eyes wide with wonder. We're creating a hybrid energy signature. It's stabilizing the core more effectively than anything we've tried so far. Admiral Jean, quickly grasping the implications of this development, issued new orders. Deploy the specialized energy transmitters. Let's amplify this hybrid signature and see what it can do. As the transmitters came online, the combined human-Tholian energy spread throughout the planet. The core's instability began to subside, and the extracted energy matrix pulsed with newfound stability. The extraction team, working in perfect unison, channeled the hybrid energy through the ancient crystalline collective machinery. A shimmering containment field sprang to life around the matrix, securing the crucial component for transport and further study. As the immediate threat of planetary collapse subsided, attention turned back to the diverse group of alien ships in orbit. Having witnessed the successful collaboration between humans, Tholians, and the crystalline collective, many of the alien representatives expressed a desire to join the alliance. Admiral Jean, seizing the diplomatic opportunity, began negotiations to integrate these new species into their efforts. The extracted energy matrix, now safely contained, held the key to preventing the galactic disaster. But unlocking its secrets would require the combined knowledge and resources of multiple civilizations. As the newly formed multi-species coalition took shape, Chris's evolved consciousness remained at the center of it all. His unique perspective, bridging the gap between organic life and advanced technology, would be crucial in the challenges that lay ahead. The Tholian homeworld, once on the brink of destruction, now pulsed with new life and purpose. The crisis had been averted, but as the assembled races looked to the stars, they knew that their greatest trial was yet to come. The fate of the stars hung in the balance, and the actions of this unlikely alliance would determine the course of history for eons to come. The newly formed multi-species coalition buzzed with activity in orbit around the Tholian homeworld. As ships from various alien races maneuvered into formation, the extraction team on the planet's surface faced an unexpected challenge. The energy matrix, now safely contained, began to emit strange pulses of energy. The rhythmic flashes reverberated through the chamber, causing the nearby crystal structures to vibrate in response. Chris, his consciousness still intertwined with the planet's systems, instantly detected the anomaly. His thoughts echoed through the minds of the team members. Alert! The matrix is emitting energy pulses. They're interfering with the stabilized core. Dr. Rodriguez rushed to her console, her fingers flying over the holographic interface. "These aren't random fluctuations," she exclaimed, eyes widening. "There's a pattern here. It's trying to communicate." HFY glided closer, its crystalline form shimmering with curiosity. The ancient collective must have imbued the matrix with more than just data. We need to decipher these signals immediately. Working with lightning speed, Dr. Rodriguez assembled a makeshift translation device, integrating components from human technology, Tholian crystal fragments, and salvaged crystalline collective machinery. As she calibrated the device, the energy pulses grew stronger, more insistent. "I've got something," Dr. Rodriguez announced, her voice tense with excitement. The device hummed to life, projecting a holographic interface filled with rapidly scrolling data. Chris's merged consciousness expanded, encompassing the new information. "It's not just data," he communicated. "The matrix contains an artificial intelligence, a remnant of the crystalline collective." The team watched in awe as the AI began to form a coherent message. Its voice, a harmonious blend of tones, resonated through the chamber. "I am Core, crystalline omniscient responsive entity. I hold the key to preventing the impending galactic catastrophe." Admiral Jean's voice crackled over the comms. "What catastrophe? We need details now." Core's response was immediate and chilling. "A network of unstable wormholes threatens to collapse, tearing apart the fabric of space-time across multiple star systems. These wormholes were created by an ancient, extinct species in their quest to traverse the galaxy. The energy matrix you've extracted is the key to stabilizing and closing these rifts." The implications of this revelation sent shockwaves through the coalition. Admiral Jean, his strategic mind racing, issued new orders. "Form a joint task force immediately. We need our most advanced ships ready to transport the Matrix to the nearest unstable wormhole." Captain Drake's voice came through, crisp and determined. "The HSS Invincible stands ready, Admiral. We'll lead the task force." On the planet's surface, the integration of Tholian volunteers into the living crystal matrix accelerated. Inspired by the success of the initial group, more Tholians came forward, their bodies merging with the pulsing crystal structures. The network expanded rapidly, providing unprecedented stability to the planet's core. Minister Lyra coordinated the effort, her crystalline form resonating with pride. Our people are evolving beyond our wildest dreams. We're becoming one with our world, ensuring its survival in our own. As the planet stabilized, new challenges arose in orbit. Commander Thorne's voice cut through the comms, urgent and focused. We've got multiple unauthorized landing attempts. Some of the alien ships are trying to access the crystalline collective technology. Major Graves sprang into action, coordinating with Thorne, deploying mixed human Tholian security teams. We'll use the enhanced Tholians to create crystal barriers and traps. No unauthorized access will be tolerated. The surface of the planet became a flurry of activity as security forces moved to intercept the intruders. Enhanced Tholians manipulated the crystal structures, forming impenetrable walls and intricate mazes to confound the would-be thieves. In orbit, Minister Lyra engaged in tense negotiations with the leaders of the alien coalition. The diplomatic dance was delicate, with each species vying for access to the newfound knowledge and technology. We must share this discovery equitably, Lyra insisted, her voice firm. The fate of our galaxies depends on our cooperation. Meanwhile, Chris experienced an unexpected evolution. His consciousness, already expanded beyond human limits, began to perceive new patterns in the galaxy's energy flows. The combination of human ingenuity, Tholian physiology, and ancient technology allowed his mind to process data at an unprecedented rate. "I can see them," Chris communicated, his thoughts tinged with awe. The wormholes, the energy flows connecting them. It's beautiful and terrifying. As the task force prepared for their mission, Dr. Rodriguez made another startling discovery. The energy pulses from core were subtly altering the physiology of those nearby, enhancing their ability to withstand extreme conditions. This could be crucial for the mission, she explained, examining the data. The crews will be better equipped to handle the stresses near the wormholes. On the outskirts of the main site, Krilzar and his followers began an ambitious project. Manipulating the planet's crystal structures, they grew a massive space dock, extending from the surface into low orbit. The structure pulsed with energy, incorporating advanced transmission technology to power the departing ships. As the HSS Invincible docked with the crystal structure, Captain Drake oversaw the final preparations. The ship had been retrofitted with crystal-based shielding, its hull shimmering with an otherworldly glow. Chris, unable to leave the planet due to his merged state, communicated one last time with the task force. "The fate of multiple galaxies rests on your success. The knowledge I've gained, it's vast but incomplete. You will face challenges we can't even imagine." The contained energy matrix was carefully loaded onto the Invincible, its pulsing energy a constant reminder of the mission's importance. As the task force prepared to depart, the transformed Tholian homeworld stood as a testament to what could be achieved through cooperation and innovation. The fleet of ships, representing every species in the coalition, moved into formation around the Invincible. Captain Drake's voice rang out across the communication channels. "All ships, prepare for departure. Our destination, the nearest unstable wormhole. The mission to save our galaxies begins now." As the task force engaged their engines, the crystal space dock released its hold, and the ships accelerated away from the Tholian homeworld. They left behind a planet forever changed, its future now inextricably linked with the fate of the cosmos. Ahead lay the treacherous physics of unstable wormholes and the challenge of preventing a catastrophe that threatened the very fabric of space-time. As the task force vanished into the depths of space, Those remaining on the Tholian homeworld faced the daunting challenge of managing the sudden influx of alien species. The planet, once on the brink of destruction, now teemed with activity as ships from various races crowded its orbit. Minister Lyra, her crystalline form shimmering with nearly unleashed stress, strode purposefully through the newly established coalition headquarters. She paused before entering the main conference room, taking a moment to compose herself. The weight of her people's future rested heavily on her shoulders. Inside, she was greeted by a cacophony of voices, each alien representative vying for attention. Human diplomats, led by the seasoned Ambassador Chin, worked tirelessly to maintain order. Lyra cleared her throat, the sound resonating through her crystal form and silencing the room. "Esteemed colleagues," she began, her voice firm yet melodious, "we must establish a temporary governing council immediately. Our resources are strained, and without proper management, we risk chaos." Ambassador Chin nodded in agreement. Minister Lyra is right. We propose a council with representatives from each major species, with decisions made by consensus. The room erupted into debate once more, but this time with a sense of purpose. As the political maneuvering continued above, the surface of the planet buzzed with its own activity. In a vast underground laboratory, Dr. Rodriguez hunched over a holographic display, her eyes widening as she processed the latest data. "This is unprecedented," she muttered, turning to her team of human and Tholian scientists. "The integration process is accelerating exponentially." A young Tholian researcher, his crystal form pulsing with excitement, pointed to a series of graphs. The latest volunteers are adapting in hours, not days. Their neural pathways are rewriting themselves to interface with the living crystal matrix. Dr. Rodriguez frowned, her excitement tempered by concern. "We need to monitor this closely. Such rapid changes could have unforeseen consequences for the Tholian species as a whole." As the scientific team delved deeper into their research, Commander Thorne and Major Marcus Graves oversaw the implementation of a new security protocol. They stood atop a towering crystal spire, surveying the landscape below. "The checkpoints are in place," Graves reported, his voice gruff. "We've integrated the Tholian crystal barriers with our force field technology. Nothing's getting through without our say-so." Thorne nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon. "Good. We can't afford any security breaches. The technology here is too valuable and too dangerous to fall into the wrong hands." No sooner had he spoken than alarms blared across the compound. Graves tapped his comm device, his face hardening as he listened to the report. "We've got multiple breach attempts in Sector 7. Alien factions trying to access the ancient tech sites." Thorne's fist tight. "Deploy the rapid response teams. Use non-lethal force, but make it clear that we won't tolerate these incursions." As security forces mobilized to defend the perimeter, Chris's expanded consciousness detected an anomaly deep within the planet's crust. His thoughts reverberated through the crystal network, reaching Dr. Rodriguez and her team. "There's something activating," Chris communicated, his mental voice tinged with curiosity and caution. "A hidden chamber previously dormant. We need to investigate immediately." Dr. Elena Sokolov, a human xenoarchaeologist with piercing blue eyes and a mane of silver hair, led the expedition into the depths of the planet. As they descended, the walls around them pulsed with an eerie blue-green light. "Fascinating," Sokolov breathed, running her hand along the smooth crystal surface. "These formations, they're unlike anything we've seen before." The team emerged into a vast cavern, its walls lined with intricate crystalline structures that hummed with energy. At the center stood a massive pillar of pulsating light, projecting holographic images that filled the chamber. "It's an archive," Sokolov gasped, her eyes wide with wonder. Records of the crystalline collective's history, their technological achievements. As the team began to analyze the data, a startling revelation emerged. Dr. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm, filled with excitement. This is incredible. There are references to other seeded worlds, just like Earth and the Tholian homeworld. The collective's influence could span the entire galaxy. Above ground, Admiral Jean received the news with a mix of hope and trepidation. He immediately called for a meeting with his top officers. "We need to find these other worlds," he declared. "They could be potential allies in our fight against the wormhole network collapse." As scout ships were prepared for deployment, Krilzar and his followers continued their work on the crystalline space dock. Their enhanced abilities allowed them to shape the crystal with unprecedented precision, creating structures capable of generating and storing massive amounts of energy. Krilzar, his form now a dazzling array of shifting colors, addressed the gathered workers. "Our efforts here may well turn the tide in the coming conflict. These energy crystals will power our fleet and defend our world." But even as hope grew within the coalition, a new threat loomed on the horizon. Long-range sensors detected a group of unknown ships entering the system. Commander Thorne's voice crackled over the comm system, tension evident in his tone. "All coalition ships, battle stations. Unidentified vessels approaching, believed to be Vortax forces. Form up and prepare to engage." The Vortax, known throughout the galaxy for their aggressive expansion and technological piracy, had arrived. Their sleek, predatory ships sliced through space, weapons primed and ready for battle. As the coalition forces scrambled to mount a defense, Dr. Rodriguez made a breakthrough in her research. She burst into the command center, her eyes wild with excitement and fear. The living crystal matrix. It's not just stabilizing the planet. It's creating a form of planetary consciousness. Before anyone could fully process this revelation, the first Vortax ships opened fire. The battle for the Tholian homeworld had begun, and with it, the true test of the coalition's strength and unity. The battle for the Tholian homeworld had begun, and with it, the true test of the coalition's strength and drive. Commander Thorne's voice cut through the chaos, calm and decisive. "All ships, form up in lattice formation. Pattern Epsilon 7. His order, precise and unexpected, sent the coalition fleet into a flurry of coordinated movement. The ships repositioned themselves with practiced efficiency, arranging into a complex three-dimensional structure that mirrored the crystalline formations on the planet below. The Vortax fleet, caught off guard by this unorthodox maneuver, hesitated in their approach. Thorne seized the moment. "Now! Synchronized strike on my mark." He watched the tactical display, waiting for the perfect alignment. "Fire!" The coalition ships unleashed a barrage of crystal-enhanced energy beams. The weapons converged on key Vortax vessels, their combined power overwhelming the enemy's shields. Several Vortax ships went dark, disabled by the precision strike. On the planet's surface, Dr. Rodriguez and her team worked feverishly in a makeshift laboratory. The room shook as stray weapons fire from the battle above impacted nearby. "Stabilize that power coupling," she shouted, her hands flying over a console covered in alien symbols. A young Tholian scientist, his crystalline form pulsing with nervous energy, manipulated a series of intricate components. "Energy flow is holding steady, Doctor. The hybrid system is online." Rodriguez nodded, her eyes fixed on the readouts. "Initiating long-range transmission." Now, the device hummed to life, sending a powerful signal racing through the unstable wormhole network towards Captain Drake's task force. Suddenly, the ground beneath them lurched violently. Chris's voice echoed through the crystal network, tinged with awe and urgency. Energy surge detected in the hidden chamber. "Something's activating." From deep within the planet, a massive structure began to rise. Crystal spires erupted from the ground, forming a colossal tower that pulsed with ancient power. Minister Lyra, watching from the coalition headquarters, made a split-second decision. Activate the defense system, she ordered, her crystalline form shimmering with grit. Chris, his consciousness intertwined with the planet's systems, reached out to the alien technology. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a surge of power that made the air crackle, the spire came to life. A shimmering energy field expanded outward, enveloping the planet and stretching into space. In orbit, Commander Thorne watched in amazement as the shield materialized around them. All ships, press the attack. Their weapons can't penetrate the barrier. The Coalition fleet surged forward, methodically targeting and disabling the Vortex vessels. The enemy's ships, their powerful weapons now rendered useless, began to break formation. Admiral Jean's voice crackled over the comm. "They're trying to retreat. Captain Ramos, spring the trap." From beyond the system's edge, a hidden group of Coalition ships revealed themselves. Led by Captain Victor Ramos, they moved to cut off the Vortex escape route. Ramos, a grizzled veteran known for his unconventional tactics, activated a new crystal-based weapon. "Deploying energy web," Ramos announced. A lattice of glowing tendrils spread out from his ships, ensnaring the fleeing Vortex vessels. With the enemy fleet neutralized, Commander Thorne led boarding parties onto the captured ships. Enhanced Tholian soldiers moved swiftly through the alien corridors, their crystal appendages effortlessly bypassing security systems. As the Coalition forces secured their victory in space, a new crisis unfolded on the planet's surface. The activation of the ancient defense system sent shockwaves through the crystal network. Integrated Tholian volunteers cried out in pain, their forms flickering and distorting. Krilzar rushed to assist his fellow Tholians, his enhanced abilities allowing him to stabilize the affected individuals. As he worked, a startling realization dawned on him. "This isn't just a malfunction," he communicated to Dr. Rodriguez. "The AI is trying to evolve our species further." Minister Lyra, alerted to this development, called an emergency meeting of the Coalition leadership. "We need a dedicated task force to study and control this ancient AI," she proposed, her voice carrying the weight of her responsibility. "Its potential is immense, but so are the risks to our autonomy." As the Coalition grappled with these internal challenges, long-range sensors lit up with a new alert. A massive energy signature, unlike anything they had encountered, appeared at the edge of the system. Commander Thorne, having just returned from securing the Vortex fleet, studied the readings with a furrowed brow. "Whatever it is, it's heading straight for us. Could be a response to the defense system activation." He turned to his officers, his voice steady despite the uncertainty. "Begin retrofitting the captured Vortex ships with our technology. We need to be ready for anything." As the Coalition prepared for this new potential threat, the fates of Captain Drake's task force and the stability of the wormhole network hung in the balance. The Tholian homeworld, once on the brink of destruction, now stood at the center of a galactic drama that continued to unfold in ways no one could have predicted. As the Coalition forces braced for the arrival of the unknown energy signature, the massive crystal spire that served as the planet's defense system began to pulse with an intense, rhythmic energy. The vibrations resonated throughout the planet's crystal network, causing the integrated Tholian volunteers to experience a sudden surge in their abilities. Chris, his consciousness still merged with the planet's systems, felt the change ripple through him. The resonance expanded his awareness beyond the planet's boundaries, granting him a fleeting glimpse of the approaching entity. His voice, tinged with awe and urgency, echoed through the command center. "Commander Thorne, Minister Lyra, I've detected the source of the energy signature. It's a ship, a crystalline vessel of immense proportions, far larger than anything in our fleet." Thorne's eyes widened as he processed the information. "Can you give us any more details, Chris?" "Negative, Commander. The contact was brief, but its size and composition are unlike anything we've encountered." Minister Lyra's crystalline form shimmered with concern. We must prepare for all possibilities. Admiral Jean, your recommendations? Admiral Jean's voice crackled over the comm system, steady and authoritative. We implement Defense Protocol Omega. All coalition ships form a multi-layered defensive sphere around the planet. Incorporate the retrofitted Vortex vessels into the formation. As the fleet moved into position, Jean continued, activate the orbital defense platforms. Use the energy-storing crystals developed by Krilzar's team to power them up. The atmosphere on the planet's surface crackled with tension as Dr. Rodriguez and her team worked feverishly in their makeshift lab. Sweat beaded on the doctor's forehead as she made a final adjustment to the long-range communication device. There, she exclaimed, her eyes bright with excitement. By fine-tuning the crystal resonance, we've created a focused beam of communication energy. This should allow us to penetrate the unstable wormhole network with greater efficiency. Her team held their breath as she activated the device. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a burst of static, a familiar voice filled the room. This is Captain Drake. Do you read me, Tholian homeworld? A cheer went up from the assembled scientists. Rodriguez leaned in, her voice urgent. We read you, Captain. What's your status? Drake's response was grim. We've encountered severe difficulties navigating the wormhole network. We've lost several ships to unexpected space-time distortions, and the energy matrix we're transporting has become increasingly unstable. We need immediate assistance and updated navigational data. Rodriguez exchanged a worried glance with her team. Stand by, Captain. We'll relay your message to command and work on a solution. As the news of Drake's predicament spread, Commander Thorne approached Minister Lyra with a daring proposal. Minister, I believe we have a way to assist Captain Drake's task force. If we use the enhanced long-range communication device to transmit a portion of Chris's merged consciousness through the wormhole network, we could provide Drake with direct access to Chris's advanced calculations and insights. Lyra considered the proposal, her crystalline form pulsing with contemplation. The risks are significant, but so are the potential benefits. Proceed, Commander. As preparations for the consciousness transfer began, the massive crystalline ship entered the outer reaches of the Tholian system. Its size became apparent, dwarfing even the largest coalition vessels. Its surface was a complex lattice of interlocking crystal structures, pulsing with energy that matched the rhythm of the activated defense spire. Minister Lyra, recognizing the need for diplomacy, quickly assembled a welcoming committee. We must attempt peaceful contact, she declared. I will lead the delegation, along with human diplomat Marcus Hale, and Krilzar as our Tholian representative. As the consciousness transfer procedure commenced, Chris's merged consciousness was partially extracted from the planet's systems and channeled through the long-range communication device. The process strained the crystal network, causing several integrated Tholian volunteers to cry out in pain as their connection to Chris wavered. Chris's consciousness hurtled through the wormhole network, gathering unprecedented insights into the nature of the galactic disaster. As his awareness expanded, he made a startling discovery. The collapsing wormholes were not a natural phenomenon, but the result of an ancient conflict between the crystalline collective and an unknown species. Back in the Tholian system, the massive crystalline ship came to a halt just beyond the Coalition's defensive sphere. It emitted a powerful energy pulse that temporarily disabled the Coalition's scanning systems. When the systems came back online, they detected multiple smaller crystalline vessels emerging from the larger ship, heading towards a Tholian homeworld. Commander Thorne's hand hovered over the weapon's control. Admiral Jean, requesting permission to intercept. Negative, Commander, Jean replied. Maintain defensive positions, but do not engage unless directly threatened. These could be diplomatic envoys. As the smaller crystalline ships drew closer, They began to emit complex energy patterns. Krilzar, his enhanced abilities coming to the fore, focused intently on the patterns. "It's a form of communication," he announced, his crystalline form shimmering with excitement. "They're requesting permission to land on our world." Minister Lyra, after a brief consultation with the coalition leadership, made her decision. Grant permission for a single vessel to land near the defense spire. Commander Thorne, prepare a security detail. I want a mix of human troops and enhanced Tholian volunteers. The designated crystalline ship descended through the planet's atmosphere, its surface shifting and reconfiguring. By the time it touched down, it had transformed into a geometric structure that blended seamlessly with the surrounding crystal formations. Minister Lyra, Marcus Hale, and Krilzar approached the landed structure, flanked by Thorne's security detail. The air crackled with tension and anticipation as they prepared to make first contact with these advanced crystalline beings. As they drew near, a section of the structure began to shimmer and undulate. The coalition representatives held their breath, poised on the brink of a moment that could reshape the future of the galaxy. As the structure's surface began to shimmer and undulate, Minister Lyra, Marcus Hale, and Krilzar stood their ground, flanked by Commander Thorne's security detail. The air crackled with tension as a section of the crystalline ship parted, revealing an opening. 3 beings emerged, their forms composed of interlocking geometric shapes that seemed to defy conventional physics. They hovered slightly above the ground, moving with fluid grace towards the welcoming committee. The security detail tightened their formation, weapons at the ready but not raised. Krilzar's crystalline form pulsed with heightened activity as he focused on the complex energy patterns emanating from the visitors. His enhanced abilities allowed him to decipher the intricate communication. "Minister Lyra," Krilzar said, his voice resonating with awe. They identify themselves as emissaries from the Prismatic Concordance. It's a coalition of crystal-based life forms from various seeded worlds. Marcus Hale, the human diplomat, stepped forward. "Can you translate for us, Krilzar? What do they want?" As Krilzar began to relay the message, the crystalline being's form shifted, creating mesmerizing patterns that seemed to complement their communication. "They say they detected the activation of our ancient defense system and came to investigate. They're curious about our level of development." Minister Lyra's form shimmered with a mix of caution and intrigue. "Tell them we welcome peaceful exchange, but will defend ourselves if necessary." While this first contact unfolded on the planet's surface, chaos erupted in the wormhole network. Chris's partially transferred consciousness surged through the unstable conduits, reaching Captain Drake's beleaguered task force. The sudden influx of advanced calculations flooded the ship systems. On the bridge of his lead vessel, Captain Drake's eyes widened as holographic displays flickered to life, showing new navigational data. "By the stars," he breathed. "Helm, adjust our course based on these new calculations. Now!" The task force banked sharply, narrowly avoiding a massive space-time distortion that would have torn their ships apart. As they navigated the treacherous network with newfound precision, Drake couldn't shake the feeling that they were racing against time. Back on the Tholian homeworld, Dr. Rodriguez and her team watched in growing alarm as the long-range communication device began to emit an ominous hum. Cracks spread across its crystal components, glowing with overloaded energy. "We're losing stability," one of the scientists shouted. "The connection with Chris is too intense." Rodriguez's fingers flew across the control panel. "Divert power to the stabilizers. We can't lose this link now." In orbit, Admiral Jean received an urgent transmission from the fleet's long-range sensors. His stoic expression faltered as he processed the information. "This is impossible," he muttered before activating the ship-wide comm. "All hands, prepare for potential evacuation protocols. The energy fluctuations are affecting nearby star systems." On the planet's surface, Commander Thorne noticed a disturbing trend among his security detail. The enhanced Tholian volunteers began to move erratically, their crystal-integrated bodies resonating with the energy patterns of the prismatic concordance emissaries. "Hold your positions," Thorne barked, but his words seemed to have no effect. The Tholians moved as if in a trance, drawn inexorably towards the visitors. Krilzar, still engaged in translating, suddenly stiffened. "Minister Lyra, the emissaries claim they have knowledge crucial to stabilizing the wormhole network. But they insist on direct access to our defense system and crystal network to utilize it properly." Lyra's crystalline form pulsed rapidly, a sign of intense deliberation. After a moment, she spoke. "We propose a compromise. A limited interface between your technology and our systems, under strict supervision from both human and Tholian experts." As the diplomatic dance continued, the hidden chamber deep within the planet rumbled to life. The ancient crystalline collective AI, dormant for eons, surged with newfound activity. It interfaced with the planet's crystal network at an unprecedented level, spawning new formations that erupted from the ground with startling speed. Mountains rose where there were once plains, continents reshaped themselves, and crystal spires pierced the sky. The very geography of the Tholian homeworld transformed before the astonished eyes of its inhabitants. In the midst of this chaos, the strain on the long-range communication device reached a breaking point. With a deafening crack, the crystal components shattered. A surge of data flooded back to the planet, overwhelming the Coalition's computer systems. Alarms blared across the fleet as ship after ship reported system malfunctions. Admiral Jean's voice cut through the cacophony. "Implement emergency protocols. Begin evacuation of non-essential personnel to stable systems immediately." On the surface, Minister Lyra made her decision. "We will proceed with the interface," she announced, her voice steady despite the planet's upheaval around them. "Commander Thorne, coordinate with Dr. Rodriguez to set up a secure link." As human and Tholian experts scrambled to establish the connection, the prismatic concordance emissaries moved towards the ancient defense spire. Their forms seemed to resonate with the structure, creating a harmonic frequency that filled the air. The moment the interface activated, a massive surge of energy erupted from the spire. It expanded in a radiant wave, engulfing the planet and stretching into space. Every crystal-based technology in its path sparked to life, evolving at an accelerated rate. Ships in orbit found their systems upgrading themselves. Tholian volunteers cried out as their integrated crystals pulsed with new power. And the very fabric of space around the planet seemed to shimmer with potential. As the energy wave washed over them, Minister Lyra, Marcus Hale, and Krilzar stood at the epicenter of a transformation that would reshape not just their world, but the fate of the entire galaxy. The true test of their alliance and their species had only just begun. The energy wave that erupted from the spire expanded rapidly, engulfing everything in its path. As it washed over the Coalition ships in orbit, their systems crackled and sparked, undergoing instantaneous upgrades. Admiral Jean gripped his command chair as his flagship shuddered. "Status report," he barked. His science officer's eyes widened as she scanned the readouts. "Sir, our systems are evolving. Crystal components are reconfiguring, enhancing our capabilities beyond anything we've seen before." Throughout the fleet, similar transformations took place. The HSS Invincible, leading Captain Drake's task force deep in the wormhole network, underwent the most dramatic change. Its hull rippled and shifted, restructuring into a resilient crystalline form. The bridge crew watched in awe as their familiar surroundings transformed around them. Drake steadied himself against a console that was rapidly changing shape. "Helm, what's our status?" "Sir, propulsion systems are adapting," the helmsman reported, fingers dancing across the evolving controls. "We're able to navigate these unstable wormholes with unprecedented precision." Back on the Tholian homeworld, the landscape continued its radical transformation. New crystal formations erupted from the ground, spreading across the planet's surface in a mesmerizing display. The ancient defense spires stretched skyward, growing taller and more intricate. Smaller spires branched out from its base, forming a network that spanned the globe. Commander Thorne observed the enhanced Tholian volunteers with growing concern. Their bodies resonated with the energy patterns of the prismatic concordance emissaries, moving as if in a trance. "Minister Lyra," Thorne called out, his voice steady despite the chaos. "I suggest we integrate these Tholians into our security detail. Their connection might improve our communication with the visitors." Lyra's crystalline form pulsed in agreement. "Proceed, Commander. We need every advantage we can get." As Thorne reorganized his team, Dr. Rodriguez and her staff worked frantically to repair the damaged long-range communication device. They scavenged components from nearby crystal formations, integrating them into the complex machinery. "This might work," Rodriguez muttered, fitting a pulsating crystal into the device. "If we can restore the connection with Chris, we might be able to." The device hummed to life, its newly integrated crystals glowing with power. A holographic display flickered into existence, showing a clearer and more stable connection to Chris's consciousness than ever before. "We've done it!" Rodriguez exclaimed. "The signal's stronger now. We should be able to maintain contact with the task force." In orbit, Admiral Jean coordinated the ongoing evacuation efforts. His calm officer interrupted with an urgent message. "Admiral, we're detecting multiple ships entering the system. It's the refugee fleet." Jean's expression hardened. "Contact Captain Ramos immediately. Tell him to establish a quarantine zone using the Vortex ships." Captain Victor Ramos received the orders and sprang into action. The newly enhanced capabilities of his retrofitted Vortex vessels allowed him to create a shimmering containment field around the incoming refugee ships. "Maintain this perimeter," Ramos ordered his fleet. "We'll allow controlled entry into the system. No exceptions." On the planet's surface, Krilzar's enhanced abilities allowed him to decipher increasingly complex information from the prismatic concordance emissaries. His crystalline form vibrated with excitement as he relayed the information to Minister Lyra and Marcus Hale. "Minister, I've uncovered crucial information," Krilzar said, his voice resonating with urgency. "The unstable wormhole network is the result of an ancient conflict with a species known as the Void Weavers. They manipulate dark matter and pose a significant threat to crystal-based life forms across the galaxy." Lyra absorbed this information, her form shimmering with intense deliberation. After a moment, she made her decision. "We must grant the prismatic concordance greater access to our systems. The stakes are too high to hesitate." As soon as Lyra gave her authorization, the ancient crystalline collective AI fully activated. Holographic projections materialized across the planet, displaying intricate star maps and tactical information about the wormhole network. Deep within the wormhole network, Captain Drake's task force pushed forward, guided by Chris's enhanced calculations. They successfully navigated through treacherous anomalies, but a new threat loomed on their sensors. "Captain," Drake's tactical officer reported, "we're detecting multiple energy signatures ahead. They appear to be ships, but unlike anything we've encountered before." Drake leaned forward in his chair, studying the sensor data. "Void Weaver scout ships," he murmured. "All vessels, adopt defensive formation. We press on to the primary wormhole nexus, but stay alert." As the task force carefully maneuvered through the awakening Void Weaver vessels, the Tholian homeworld reached a critical point in its transformation. The planet's core pulsated with immense energy, causing gravitational fluctuations that rippled through the system. Dr. Rodriguez stared at her readings in disbelief. "This is incredible," she breathed. The entire planet is becoming a massive, living computer. It's processing vast amounts of data about the wormhole network and the impending disaster. Admiral Jean received an urgent transmission from Earth, adding another layer of complexity to the already chaotic situation. The energy wave had reached human-controlled space, causing widespread technological advancements and societal upheaval. As Jean contemplated this new development, his sensor officer's voice cut through his thoughts. "Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting a massive void in space. It's moving towards our system at an alarming speed." Jean's eyes narrowed as he studied the sensor data. The void seemed to devour light itself, a black maw heading straight for them. A Void Weaver mothership, he realized, his voice barely above a whisper. The Admiral activated the fleet-wide comm. "All ships, battle stations. We face a threat unlike any we've encountered before. Prepare for potential engagement." As coalition forces scrambled to meet this new challenge, the fate of not just the Tholian system, but the entire galaxy hung in the balance. The race against time had entered its most critical phase, with the transformed planet, the evolving fleet, and the approaching Void Weaver mothership on a collision course that would determine the future of all crystal-based life forms. The void-like mass on the long-range sensors grew larger with each passing moment, its ominous presence sending ripples of tension through the coalition fleet. Admiral Jean's voice, firm and resolute, echoed through the comm channels. "All ships form up. Defensive perimeter around the system's outer rim. HSS Invincible, take point." Captain Drake's newly transformed vessel, its crystalline hull gleaming in the starlight, smoothly maneuvered into position. The rest of the fleet fell into formation behind it, a wall of shimmering metal and crystal standing between the approaching threat and the Tholian homeworld. On the planet's surface, the integration of prismatic concordance technology reached a fever pitch. The ground trembled as new crystal formations erupted, their intricate patterns mirroring the complex web of the galactic wormhole system. Dr. Rodriguez, her face illuminated by the pulsing light of the evolving crystals, worked feverishly to stabilize the long-range communication device. "Almost there," she muttered, carefully fitting a fragment of the new crystal formation into the device's matrix. With a surge of energy, the holographic display flickered to life, Chris's consciousness now more clearly defined than ever before. "Connection established," Rodriguez announced, her voice tinged with excitement and relief. "We now have real-time data transfer with the task force." Meanwhile, deep within the wormhole network, Captain Drake's ships engaged in a deadly dance with the awakened Void Weaver scout vessels. The HSS Invincible's newly evolved weapons systems flared to life, lancing out with precision to disable an enemy ship. "Helm, evasive pattern Delta," Drake ordered, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Weapons, target the lead scout's propulsion systems." The task force pushed forward, their progress slow but steady as they fought their way towards the primary wormhole nexus. Each engagement with the Void Weavers provided valuable data on their capabilities and weaknesses, information that flowed back to the Tholian homeworld through the enhanced communication link. Back in the Tholian system, Commander Thorne coordinated with the enhanced Tholian volunteers, their crystalline bodies humming with newfound power. They moved in perfect synchronization, activating a series of energy barriers that sprang to life between the towering crystal spires. "Defense grid online," Thorne reported, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "We're ready for both conventional and dark matter attacks." Krilzar, his form pulsing with energy, interfaced directly with the planet's core. Ancient battle strategies flooded his consciousness, a wellspring of tactical knowledge from the crystalline collective's past encounters with the Void Weavers. "Admiral Jean." Krilzar's voice resonated through the communication channels. "I'm transmitting tactical data on Void Weaver weaknesses and attack patterns. This information is crucial for our defense." As the massive Void Weaver mothership entered the system's outskirts, its true scale became apparent. The colossal construct of dark energy and exotic matter dwarfed even the largest coalition ships, its very presence warping the fabric of space-time around it. Pulses of dark energy emanated from the vessel, causing minor fractures in the orbits of the system's outer planets. Minister Lyra, her crystalline form shimmering with tension, made a fateful decision. Activate the ancient defense system. Full power. The central spire on the Tholian homeworld blazed to life, channeling immense energy from the planet's core. Smaller spires lit up in response, creating a web of energy that extended far into space. The planet itself seemed to pulse with power, transformed into a weapon of unimaginable potential. In the midst of this escalating crisis, Captain Victor Ramos faced a new challenge. The approach of the Void Weaver mothership sent waves of panic through the refugee fleet, causing several ships to break formation and attempt to flee. "Deploy Vortax ships in Pattern Omega," Ramos ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos. "Use crystal-based tractor beams to gently redirect the fleeing vessels. We cannot allow a breach in the quarantine zone." The sleek Vortax ships moved into position, their newly enhanced systems allowing for precise control. Beams of crystalline energy reached out, gently but firmly guiding the panicked refugee ships back into formation. Deep within the wormhole network, Drake's task force finally reached the primary nexus. The energy matrix they carried reacted violently to the convergence of wormhole energies, its containment field fluctuating dangerously. "Transfer the matrix to the Invincible's reinforced chamber," Drake commanded, his voice tense. "We need to stabilize it long enough to reach the target coordinates." As the energy matrix was carefully moved to its new home, the Void Weaver mothership loomed ever closer to the Tholian system. The Coalition fleet, their ships jam-packed with newly evolved weaponry, prepared for the battle of their lives. On the planet below, the merged technologies pushed the boundaries of possibility. The entire world transformed into a bastion of crystal-based power. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shape the hope of the universe. As both sides prepared their first moves, the space between them crackled with tension and the promise of an epic struggle to come. Come, the void-like mass grew larger with each passing moment, its ominous presence sending ripples of tension through the Coalition fleet. Admiral Jean's voice, firm and resolute, echoed through the comm channels. "All ships form up. Defensive perimeter around the system's outer rim. HSS Invincible, take point." Captain Drake's newly transformed vessel, its crystalline hull gleaming in the starlight, smoothly maneuvered into position. The rest of the fleet fell into formation behind it, creating a multi-layered defensive sphere around the Tholian homeworld. The shimmering wall of metal and crystal stood as the last line of defense against the approaching threat. On the planet's surface, the integration of prismatic concordance technology reached a fever pitch. The ground trembled as new crystal formations erupted, their intricate patterns mirroring the complex web of the galactic wormhole system. Dr. Rodriguez, her face illuminated by the pulsing light of the evolving crystals, worked feverishly to stabilize the long-range communication device. "Almost there," she muttered, carefully fitting a fragment of the new crystal formation into the device's matrix. With a surge of energy, the holographic display flickered to life, Chris's consciousness now more clearly defined than ever before. "Connection established," Rodriguez announced, her voice tinged with excitement and relief. "We now have real-time data transfer with the task force." The enhanced link allowed for instantaneous communication between Captain Drake's ships and the Tholian homeworld, bridging the vast distances of space and time. Commander Thorne coordinated with the enhanced Tholian volunteers, their crystalline bodies humming with newfound power. They moved in perfect synchronization, activating a series of energy barriers that sprang to life between the towering crystal spires. "Defense grid online," Thorne reported, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "We're ready for both conventional and dark matter attacks." As the massive Void Weaver mothership entered the system's outskirts, its true scale became apparent. The colossal construct of dark energy and exotic matter dwarfed even the largest coalition ships, its very presence warping the fabric of space-time around it. Suddenly, pulses of dark energy emanated from the vessel, causing minor fractures in the orbits of the system's outer planets. Several smaller coalition ships were caught in these distortions, their crews experiencing time at different rates relative to the rest of the fleet. "Sir, we're detecting temporal anomalies throughout the system," a sensor officer reported to Admiral Jean. "Ships in sectors 3 and 7 are reporting time dilation effects." Jean's expression hardened as he assessed the situation. "Redirect our temporal stabilizers to compensate. We can't afford to lose sync with any of our forces." On the planet's surface, Krilzar interfaced directly with the planet's core, his crystalline form pulsing with energy. Ancient battle strategies flooded his consciousness, a wellspring of tactical knowledge from the crystalline collective's past encounters with the Void Weavers. "Admiral Jean." Krilzar's voice resonated through the communication channels. "I'm transmitting tactical data on Void Weaver weaknesses and attack patterns. This information is crucial for our defense." As the data streamed to the fleet, ships began adjusting their formations and reconfiguring their weapon systems. The HSS Invincible's crystalline hull shimmered as it adapted to the new tactical information, its weapons primed for the coming battle. Minister Lyra, her form shimmering with tension, made a fateful decision. Activate the ancient defense system. Full power. The central spire on the Tholian homeworld blazed to life, channeling immense energy from the planet's core. Smaller spires lit up in response, creating a web of energy that extended far into space. The planet itself seemed to pulse with power, transformed into a weapon of unimaginable potential. As the energy field expanded, it collided with the Void Weaver's dark energy pulses. The clash of forces created a spectacular display of light and gravitational waves that rippled through the system, temporarily disrupting communications and sensor systems on both sides. "Recalibrate sensors," Jean ordered as static filled the view screens. "We can't afford to be blind." In the midst of this escalating crisis, Captain Victor Ramos faced a new challenge. The gravitational distortions caused by the Void Weaver mothership had trapped several refugee ships in pockets of warp space-time. "Deploy Vortax ships in Pattern Omega," Ramos ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos. "Use crystal-based tractor beams to extract those vessels from the distortions. We cannot allow harm to come to the civilians under our protection." The sleek Vortax ships moved into position, their newly enhanced systems allowing for precise control. Beams of crystalline energy reached out, gently but firmly guiding the trapped refugee ships back to safety. Deep within the wormhole network, Drake's task force finally reached the primary nexus. The energy matrix they carried reacted violently to the convergence of wormhole energies, its containment field fluctuating dangerously. "Transfer the matrix to the Invincible's reinforced chamber," Drake commanded, his voice tense. "We need to stabilize it long enough to reach the target coordinates." As the energy matrix was carefully moved to its new home, a swarm of reactivated Void Weaver scout ships emerged from the swirling energies of the Nexus. The task force's evolved weapon systems flared to life, lancing out with precision to disable the ancient threat. "Helm, evasive pattern Delta," Drake ordered, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Weapons, concentrate fire on their propulsion systems. We push through to our objective whatever it takes." Back in the Tholian system, the Void Weaver mothership launched its first wave of attack. Thousands of smaller craft, composed of swirling dark matter, emerged from the massive vessel and advanced toward the Coalition's defensive line. These fighters phased in and out of normal space, presenting a nightmarish challenge for the defenders. Admiral Jean's voice cut through the chaos. "All ships, form into agile squadrons. Use the gravitational distortions to your advantage. Crystal-enhanced vessels, Take point and lead the charge." The Coalition fleet broke into smaller, more maneuverable units, each led by a ship jam-packed with newly evolved weaponry. They executed complex, three-dimensional maneuvers, using the warped space-time to their advantage as they engaged the Void Weaver fighters. On the Tholian homeworld, the planet's transformation accelerated. The crystal formations covering the surface shifted and realigned, forming intricate geometric patterns that pulsed with energy. A powerful gravitational field emanated from these patterns, affecting the movement of both Coalition and Void Weaver ships in near-planet orbit. As the battle raged in space, Dr. Rodriguez worked furiously to maintain the connection with Chris's consciousness. The enhanced link provided crucial real-time data on wormhole fluctuations, allowing the Coalition forces to predict and counter the Void Weaver's movements. The clash of energies, the dance of ships through distorted space, and the pulsing heart of the transformed Tholian world created a cosmic spectacle unlike anything witnessed before. The fate of crystal-based life throughout the galaxy hung in the balance as the battle entered its most critical phase. The Coalition forces braced themselves as the Void Weaver mothership unleashed its second wave of attack. Massive constructs of dark matter, resembling colossal tentacles, unfurled from the alien vessel. These writhing appendages stretched across the battlefield, threatening to engulf Coalition ships in their inky embrace. Admiral Jean's voice crackled over the comm channels, his tone urgent but controlled. "All ships, execute maneuver Epsilon 7. Use the gravitational distortions to your advantage." The Coalition fleet responded with precision, their enhanced ships diving into the pockets of warped space-time created by the Void Weaver's dark energy pulses. Vessels phased in and out of normal space, their movements guided by the tactical data transmitted from Krilzar. Captain Drake, observing the battle from his position in the wormhole network, marveled at the fleet's coordination. The HSS Invincible's crystalline hull shimmered as it executed a series of impossible maneuvers, appearing to blink in and out of existence. On the bridge of the flagship, Admiral Jean watched as the Void Weaver targeting systems struggled to lock onto the elusive Coalition ships. "Press the attack," he ordered. "Concentrate fire on their propulsion nodes." The enhanced weapons of the Coalition fleet lanced out, striking the dark matter constructs with surgical precision. Where conventional weapons had once proven ineffective, the newly evolved crystal-based technology tore through the alien defenses. Meanwhile, on the surface of the Tholian homeworld, the planet's transformation reached a critical juncture. The intricate geometric patterns formed by the crystal structures began to resonate with the energy field generated by the defense spires. The ground trembled, and the air crackled with power. Minister Lyra, her crystalline form pulsing with tension, turned to Commander Thorne. "The planetary defense system is reaching maximum output. We must harness this power before it destabilizes." Thorne nodded, his fingers dancing across the control interface. Initiating gravitational lens, focusing protocol, preparing to channel energy into a coherent beam. As the planet-wide energy beam charged, the enhanced Tholian volunteers moved in perfect synchronization. They manipulated the network of smaller spires across the planet's surface, creating a complex series of refraction points. Dr. Rodriguez, still working on the long-range communication device, called out to Thorne, "Commander, I'm detecting a quantum entanglement effect. We may be able to transmit data instantaneously across the wormhole network." Thorne's eyes widened at the implications. "Patch me through to Admiral Jean immediately." In the wormhole network, Captain Drake's task force faced a critical moment. The energy matrix they were transporting had become dangerously unstable, threatening to breach the HSS Invincible's containment systems. Drake's voice was tense as he addressed his crew. "Prepare to jettison the matrix on my mark. Aim for the heart of the wormhole nexus." As the matrix was released, it exploded in a dazzling display of energy. The resulting wave rippled through the entire wormhole network, closing unstable passages and reinforcing weakened ones. However, the surge also awakened dormant Void Weaver outposts scattered throughout the network. Back in the Tholian system, Captain Ramos faced a new threat as the Void Weaver mothership redirected a portion of its dark matter constructs towards the vulnerable refugee fleet. Vortex ships form up, Ramos commanded, create a defensive barrier around the civilian vessels. Divert all power to crystal-based shields. The sleek Vortex ships moved into position, their newly acquired shields glowing with energy as they deflected the incoming attacks. The refugee ships huddled behind this protective barrier, their crews watching in awe as the battle raged around them. On the Tholian homeworld, the planetary defense system reached full charge. Minister Lyra gave the order, her voice resolute. Fire the main beam. A blinding shaft of energy erupted from the planet's surface, focused by the gravitational lens, effect into a coherent beam of incredible power. It sliced through space, striking the Void Weaver mothership with devastating force. The impact sent shockwaves through the alien vessel, rupturing its outer shell and exposing the swirling dark matter within. The mothership's assault faltered as it diverted resources to repair the damage. Admiral Jean seized the opportunity. All ships, concentrate fire on the breach. Don't let them recover. As the coalition pressed their advantage, the energy beam's impact released a burst of exotic particles. These particles interacted with the gravitational distortions in the system, creating unpredictable space-time fluctuations. Several coalition ships found themselves temporarily phased out of normal space. On the bridge of one such vessel, a sensor officer reported in confusion, "Sir, our chronometers are desynchronized. We're experiencing time at a different rate than the main fleet." Commander Thorne, observing these fluctuations from the planet's surface, began to formulate a plan. He turned to Krilzar, his mind racing with possibilities. If we can predict these fluctuations, we might be able to use them to our advantage. We could outmaneuver the Void Weavers by exploiting the differences in time flow. As Thorne and the enhanced Tholian volunteers worked to develop a method for controlling the space-time anomalies, Admiral Jean received a priority communication from Captain Drake. "Admiral," Drake's voice came through, clear despite the vast distance. "We've stabilized a significant portion of the wormhole network, but we've awakened dormant Void Weaver defenses. We're engaging them now, but our progress to the rendezvous point will be delayed." Jean's expression hardened as he assessed the situation. The Coalition had scored a significant hit against the Void Weaver mothership, but the battle was just the beginning. The awakening of ancient defenses in the wormhole network threatened to cut off their reinforcements, making the success of Drake's mission even more critical. As the Admiral prepared to issue new orders, another wave of dark matter constructs emerged from the wounded mothership, their forms more twisted and chaotic than before. The Coalition forces steeled themselves for the next phase of the battle, knowing that the fate of crystal-based life throughout the galaxy hung in the balance. Balance as the battle entered its most critical phase. The Coalition forces braced themselves for the next onslaught, knowing that every moment counted in this cosmic struggle. Commander Thorne's eyes narrowed as he studied the data streaming across his display. The space-time fluctuations caused by the interaction of the Tholian energy beam and the Void Weaver's dark matter constructs presented both a challenge and an opportunity. He turned to Krilzar, his mind racing with possibilities. "If we can predict these fluctuations, we might be able to use them to our advantage," Thorne said, his voice urgent. "We could outmaneuver the Void Weavers by exploiting the differences in time flow." Krilzar's crystalline form pulsed with agreement. "Agreed. We must develop a predictive algorithm immediately." The enhanced Tholian volunteers gathered around, their collective consciousness merging with the planet's transformed core. As they worked, complex equations and multidimensional models flowed through their shared mental space. Thorn's fingers flew across the holographic interface, translating the Tholian's insights into a workable tactical system. "We need to factor in the gravitational lens effect," he muttered, adjusting a series of parameters. As the algorithm took shape, Thorn transmitted the data to Admiral Jean. The Admiral's eyes widened as he reviewed the information. "Implement this into our tactical systems immediately," he ordered his staff. The Coalition fleet's movements transformed almost instantly. Ships blinked in and out of normal space with uncanny precision, appearing behind Void Weaver vessels to launch devastating attacks before vanishing again. The enemy forces, caught off guard by this new tactic, struggled to adapt. On the bridge of the HSS Invincible, Captain Drake watched in awe as a Coalition cruiser materialized seemingly out of nowhere, unleashed a barrage of crystal-enhanced weaponry on a Void Weaver construct, and disappeared before the enemy could retaliate. "Helm, execute Maneuver Delta 9, Drake ordered, seizing the opportunity. "Weapons, target their propulsion nodes the moment we phase back in." The Invincible vanished, reappearing seconds later behind a massive Void Weaver structure. Its weapons lanced out, striking with pinpoint accuracy and crippling the enemy vessel. Back on the Tholian homeworld, Minister Lyra surveyed the evolving battlefield. "We need to increase our offensive capabilities," she declared. "Authorize the construction of additional energy-focusing arrays." The planet's surface came alive as crystal structures reconfigured themselves, forming new spires that stretched towards the sky. These structures tapped into the planet's core, channeling its immense energy into multiple beams that lashed out at the Void Weaver mothership. In the wormhole network, Captain Drake's task force found itself face-to-face with the awakened Void Weaver defenses. Ancient space stations, dormant for millennia, sprung to life, disgorging swarms of automated fighters. "Defensive Formation Omega," Drake commanded. "Use our enhanced shields to weather their initial assault. We need to find weaknesses in these defenses." As the task force's ships formed a tight defensive cluster, Dr. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm channel. "Captain, I've made a crucial discovery," she reported. "The energy signature of these defenses matches frequencies in the crystalline collective archives. I'm transmitting potential countermeasures now." Drake's tactical officer quickly integrated the new data. "Sir, we've identified vulnerabilities in their power systems," he reported. "Concentrate fire on those weak points," Drake ordered. "Let's take these relics out of commission." The task force's weapons found their marks, causing cascading failures in several of the ancient platforms. As they pushed deeper into the network, a massive construct loomed before them, dwarfing the other defenses. "That must be the control hub for the entire network," Drake realized. "If we can disable it, we might be able to stabilize the wormhole system and cut off the Void Weaver's interstellar travel capabilities." In the Tholian system, Captain Ramos faced a dire situation as more Void Weaver constructs broke through the defensive line, threatening the refugee fleet. "We need a new strategy," he muttered. Then his eyes lit up with an idea. "All refugee ships, form a tight cluster," he ordered. "Vortax vessels, prepare to generate a synchronized crystal-based shield around the entire group." As the massive shield solidified, an unexpected resonance occurred. The crystal structure began to amplify its protective capabilities by interacting with the energy field emanating from the Tholian homeworld. This resonance created a feedback loop, transmitting tactical data directly to the Coalition Command Center. Admiral Jean studied the new influx of information, his brow furrowed in concentration. A pattern emerged in the Void Weaver attack formations, reminiscent of a complex neural network. He quickly relayed his findings to Commander Thorn. "We need to disrupt their coordination," Jean explained. "Develop a counter-algorithm to interfere with their command structure." Thorn nodded, his fingers already dancing across the control interface. He worked with the planet's transformed core, using the network of crystal spires to broadcast a carefully modulated energy signal. The signal targeted the frequencies used by the Void Weaver mothership to control its smaller units. The effect was almost immediate. Void Weaver forces began to show signs of disorganization, their movements becoming erratic and uncoordinated. Some units even turned against each other, creating chaos in their previously unified front. As the coalition forces pressed their advantage, the Void Weaver mothership showed signs of weakening. Large sections of its dark matter construct began to dissipate, revealing a solid core structure beneath. Admiral Jean's voice rang out across the coalition fleet. "This is our chance. All ships, concentrate fire on the exposed core. We end this now." The coalition ships surged forward, their weapon systems charged to maximum capacity. Crystal-enhanced beams and projectiles streaked across space, converging on the wounded Void Weaver mothership. The battle had reached its climactic moment, with the fate of humanity and all alien species hanging in the balance. As the coalition forces converged on the weakened Void Weaver mothership, a sudden burst of energy rippled through the Tholian system. The space around them shimmered, distorting the very fabric of reality. Admiral Jean's tactical display flickered, then went dark. "Status report," he barked, gripping the arms of his command chair. "Sir, all systems are experiencing intermittent failures," his second-in-command reported. "The energy pulse seems to have originated from the outer asteroid belt." Before Jean could respond, a familiar voice crackled over the comm. "Admiral, this is Commander Thorne. We've detected a massive data influx at the planet's core. It appears to be coming from an activated crystalline collective outpost in the asteroid belt." Jean's eyes widened. "A hidden outpost? Can you make sense of the data?" "Working on it now, sir," Thorne replied, his voice tense with concentration. "It's incredible. We're receiving schematics for advanced weaponry, specifically designed to combat the Void Weavers." On the Tholian homeworld, Commander Thorne and Krilzar huddled around a holographic display, their forms bathed in its ethereal glow. The enhanced Tholian volunteers moved in perfect synchronization, their crystalline bodies resonating with the incoming data. "There!" Krilzar exclaimed, his voice a harmonic thrum. "A device capable of generating an anti-dark matter field. If we can construct this..." Thorne nodded, his fingers flying across the interface. "Minister Lyra, are you seeing this? We need authorization to begin construction immediately." Minister Lyra's holographic form materialized beside them, her expression grave but determined. "You have full authorization, Commander. Reconfigure whatever resources necessary. This may be our best chance to end this conflict." As the Tholian surface came alive with activity, crystal structures twisting and reshaping to form the components of the new device, Admiral Jean coordinated the fleet's assault on the Void Weaver mothership. "All ships, focus fire on these coordinates," he ordered, highlighting the areas where the dark matter construct had already begun to dissipate. "Captain Ramos, move your refugee fleet into position. Use your amplified sensors to identify any additional vulnerabilities." Captain Ramos's voice came through, steady despite the chaos surrounding them. "Understood, Admiral. Moving into position now." The refugee fleet, still encased in its shimmering crystal shield, maneuvered with surprising agility. As they approached the mothership, their sensors penetrated deep into its structure, revealing a complex network of energy conduits. "Admiral," Ramos reported, "we've identified critical junctions in their power distribution system. Transmitting targeting data now." In the wormhole network, Captain Drake's task force engaged in a furious battle against the ancient control hub. The space around them was a maelstrom of energy as automated defense systems unleashed volley after volley of dark matter projectiles. "Target those nodes," Drake shouted, pointing to a cluster of pulsating structures on the hub surface. Rodriguez's data shows they're key to the hub's operations. The task force's ships unleashed a barrage of crystal-enhanced weaponry. Beams of pure energy sliced through the void, striking the identified nodes with surgical precision. As each node failed, sections of the massive hub went dark. "It's working," Drake's tactical officer exclaimed. "The hub's defenses are faltering, and, sir, the surrounding wormholes are stabilizing." Back in the Tholian system, the construction of the anti-dark matter device neared completion. Commander Thorne stood at the center of a vast array of crystal spires, each pulsing with energy drawn from the planet's transformed core. "Final calibrations complete," he reported to Minister Lyra. "We're ready to integrate the device into the main defensive array." As Thorne gave the order to activate the integration sequence, a massive surge of dark energy erupted from the Void Weaver mothership. A swirling vortex of impossible darkness expanded rapidly, threatening to engulf the entire Coalition fleet. "Evasive maneuvers," Admiral Jean commanded. "Execute pattern Omega-3." The Coalition ships scattered, their movements precise and coordinated thanks to the predictive algorithms. Even so, the edges of the dark energy vortex caught several vessels, warping their hulls and overloading their systems. On the Tholian homeworld, Minister Lyra watched the battle unfold with growing concern. As the final components of the anti-dark matter device locked into place, she made her decision. "Commander Thorne, activate the device. Now!" Thorne's hand hovered over the activation control for a split second before pressing down. The crystal spires around him blazed with blinding light, channeling the full power of the planet's core into the newly constructed device. A beam of energy, unlike anything seen before in the known galaxy, erupted from the planet's surface. It cut through space like a scalpel, striking the Void Weaver mothership with pinpoint accuracy. Where the beam touched, the dark matter construct simply ceased to exist, unraveling at the molecular level. Admiral Jean watched in awe as massive sections of the mothership dissolved into nothingness, revealing more of its solid core. "All ships, concentrate fire on the exposed sections," he ordered. "This is our chance to end this." As the Coalition fleet redoubled its assault, Captain Ramos's refugee ships moved to cut off potential escape routes, their crystal shields still resonating with protective energy. In the wormhole network, Captain Drake's task force had finally reached the central power source of the control hub. With a precisely targeted strike, they severed its connection to the rest of the structure. The effect was immediate and far-reaching. Wormholes throughout the network began to stabilize, their swirling energies realigning into more stable configurations. But as the ancient system shut down, a massive energy surge built up, racing through the network towards Drake's ships. "All power to shields," Drake shouted as the wave of energy approached. "Brace for impact." The surge washed over the task force, battering their shields and overloading systems. Warning alarms blared on every ship as they fought to maintain control and complete their mission. As the battle raged on multiple fronts, the fate of the stars hung in the balance. The Void Weaver mothership, once seemingly invincible, now fought for its very existence against the combined might of the Coalition and the advanced crystalline collective technology. In the wormhole network, Captain Drake and his crew raced against time to escape the collapsing hub and rejoin the main fleet. The next few moments would determine not just the outcome of this battle, but the future of interstellar travel and the balance of power among the galaxy's civilizations. The future of the cosmos hung in the balance as the Coalition forces converged on the weakened Void Weaver mothership. The anti-dark matter beam continued its relentless assault, peeling away layers of the massive construct to reveal its vulnerable core. Admiral Jean's eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical display. "This is our moment," he said, his voice tight with dedication. "All ships, prepare for a final coordinated strike. Target these coordinates." The Coalition fleet moved into position, their weapon systems humming with energy. Crystal-enhanced cannons locked onto the exposed sections of the mothership's core, primed to deliver a devastating blow. "Fire!" Jean commanded. A dazzling array of energy beams and projectiles erupted from the Coalition ships, converging on the Void Weaver's weakened structure. The impact was catastrophic. Explosions blossomed across the mothership's surface, each one triggering a chain reaction that spread through its power systems. The bridge of Jean's flagship shuddered as shockwaves rippled through space. Warning klaxons blared as the ship's systems struggled to compensate for the sudden energy surge. "Maintain formation," Jean ordered, gripping his command chair. "Press the attack." As the Void Weaver mothership began to break apart, it unleashed a final, desperate counterattack. A massive wave of dark energy erupted from its dying core, expanding rapidly towards the Coalition fleet. Captain Ramos, his face illuminated by the glow of his tactical display, reacted instantly. "All refugee ships form up. We need to protect the main fleet." The retrofitted Vortex vessels moved with surprising grace, their crystal-based shields forming a protective barrier around the Coalition forces. As the dark energy wave struck, the shields flared brilliantly, absorbing much of the destructive force. But the strain was immense. Ramos watched in horror as several ships in his formation lost power, their shields flickering and dying. "We're losing containment," he shouted into the comm. "We need support." On the surface of the Tholian homeworld, Commander Thorne and Krilzar worked feverishly to recalibrate the anti-dark matter device. Their fingers danced across holographic interfaces as they redirected power from the planet's core. "We need more energy," Thorne shouted, his face beaded with sweat. "Krilzar, can you increase the resonance of the crystal spires?" The Tholian's crystalline body vibrated as he interfaced directly with the planet's systems. "Affirmative," he replied, his voice a harmonic thrum. "Channeling additional power now." A network of glowing lines spread across the planet's surface as the crystal spires pulsed with renewed energy. The anti-dark matter device hummed to life, projecting a wide-area neutralization field that began to dissipate the encroaching wave of dark energy. In the wormhole network, Captain Drake's task force faced their own moment of crisis. The energy surge from the disabled control hub raced towards them, a wall of destructive force that threatened to tear their ships apart. "All power to shields," Drake ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "Brace for impact." The surge slammed into the task force with bone-jarring force. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks as overloaded systems gave way. Drake was thrown from his chair, landing hard on the deck plating. But as the initial wave passed, he realized that most of his ships had weathered the storm. The enhanced shields had held, protecting the human crews from the worst of the energy bombardment. Drake pulled himself to his feet, surveying the damage. "Status report," he barked. His tactical officer, her face streaked with soot, responded quickly. "Multiple systems damaged, sir, but we're still operational." "And, sir, the wormhole network is stabilizing." Drake's eyes widened as he took in the sensor readings. The chaotic energies that had threatened to tear apart the fabric of space-time were settling into more predictable patterns. "This is our chance," he said, a plan forming in his mind. "Deploy the remaining energy matrices at these key junctions. We can reinforce the stabilization process." As Drake's task force worked to secure the wormhole network, the battle in the Tholian system reached its climax. The Void Weaver mothership, its core fully exposed and critically damaged, began to collapse in on itself. Admiral Jean recognized the danger immediately. "All ships fall back," he ordered. "Retreat to minimum safe distance." The Coalition fleet moved swiftly, putting distance between themselves and the dying mothership. They watched in awe as the massive structure imploded, forming a gravitational singularity that began to draw in surrounding debris and energy. On the Tholian homeworld, Minister Lyra made a bold decision. "Commander Thorne," she said, her holographic form shimmering with tension, "reconfigure the defensive arrays. Focus all available energy on that singularity." Thorne nodded, his fingers flying across the control interface. The planet's defensive systems realigned, channeling their power into a single, concentrated beam. It lanced out across space, striking the collapsing core of the Void Weaver mothership. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The influx of anti-dark matter energy destabilized the forming singularity. In a blinding flash of light, the remnants of the mothership were completely annihilated, leaving behind only scattered debris and dissipating energy. As the coalition forces regrouped, long-range sensors detected a new phenomenon at the edge of the system. The massive release of energy had triggered a cascading effect through the nearby space-time fabric. Pockets of distorted space began to form, creating temporary windows into other parts of the galaxy. Admiral Jean leaned forward in his chair, studying the sensor readings with intense curiosity. "Are you seeing this, Captain Ramos?" he asked over the calm, affirmative Admiral. Ramos replied, his voice filled with wonder. "We're detecting multiple spatial anomalies. Some appear to be windows to other worlds, other civilizations." Jean's mind raced with the implications. These anomalies could represent both incredible opportunities and potential new threats. "Captain Ramos," he said after a moment of consideration, "I want you to lead an exploratory team. Gather all the data you can on these phenomena. Assess any potential threats or opportunities they might present." As Ramos acknowledged the order, Jean turned his attention to securing the immediate area. "All available ships, form a perimeter around these spatial windows," he commanded. "We need to contain and study these anomalies before they potentially destabilize further." The Coalition fleet moved into position, their sensors trained on the shimmering pockets of distorted space. Through these windows, they caught tantalizing glimpses of other worlds and civilizations. Some appeared untouched by the conflict they had just endured, while others showed signs of ongoing battles or ancient ruins. On the Tholian homeworld, Commander Thorne and Krilzar began sifting through the vast amounts of data generated by the recent battle and the activation of the Crystalline Collective Outpost. As they analyzed the information, patterns began to emerge, hinting at the existence of similar outposts in other star systems. "This could be a game-changer," Thorne muttered, his eyes scanning the holographic displays. "If we can locate and activate more of these outposts." Krilzar's crystalline form pulsed with excitement. "We could create a network of advanced defensive technology," he finished. "A way to protect ourselves against future threats." As the immediate danger subsided, the leaders of the coalition faced the monumental task of rebuilding and preparing for the challenges that lay ahead. The destruction of the Void Weaver mothership had bought them time, but questions remained about the extent of the Void Weaver presence in the galaxy and the potential for future incursions. In the Wormhole Network, Captain Drake's task force continued their work, finalizing the stabilization process and securing key junctions. The once chaotic pathways between stars were slowly being tamed, offering the promise of safe interstellar travel once again. Admiral Jean stood on the bridge of his flagship, gazing out at the star-filled expanse before him. The battle was won, but he knew that their work was far from finished. The newly discovered spatial anomalies and the potential network of crystalline collective outposts represented both incredible opportunities and daunting challenges. As he watched Captain Ramos's ships begin their exploratory mission, Jean couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. They stood on the threshold of a new era, one filled with unknown wonders and potential dangers. Whatever lay ahead, he knew that the diverse coalition of species that had come together to face the Void Weaver threat would face it united. The Admiral turned to his communication officer. "Open a channel to all coalition ships," he said, preparing to address the fleet. The next phase of their journey was about to begin, and there was much work to be done. There was much work to be done. Admiral Jean concluded his address to the fleet. As the communication channel closed, he turned his attention to the immediate tasks at hand. "Captain Drake, report," Jean commanded, opening a secure channel to the task force in the wormhole network. Drake's holographic image flickered to life on the bridge. "Admiral, we've successfully deployed the remaining energy matrices at key junctions. The wormhole network is stabilizing rapidly. We're seeing unprecedented levels of stability in previously chaotic areas." Jean nodded, a glimmer of satisfaction in his eyes. "Excellent work, Captain. Proceed with caution and conduct a series of test jumps to verify the network's integrity." As Drake acknowledged the order, Jean shifted his focus to the spatial anomalies at the edge of the Tholian system. He watched as Captain Ramos's exploration fleet approached the shimmering windows in space, their enhanced ships gleaming against the backdrop of stars. On the bridge of his lead vessel, Captain Ramos studied the sensor readings with intense concentration. "Deploy the probe drones," he ordered, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. The sleek, crystalline-enhanced drones shot forward, passing through the spatial window with a brief flare of energy. Ramos and his crew held their breath, waiting for the data to stream back. "Sir, we're receiving telemetry," his science officer reported, her eyes wide with excitement. "The drones have successfully penetrated the barrier. They're transmitting data on. It's a habitable planet, sir. Advanced civilization detected." Ramos leaned forward, studying the holographic display that materialized before him. The alien world that appeared was a breathtaking sight. Crystal spires reached towards the sky, while beings that seemed to be made of living crystal moved about in complex patterns. "Fascinating," Ramos murmured. "They appear to be a crystal-based life form, not unlike the Tholians, but clearly distinct. Let's gather as much data as we can without dash." His words were cut short as a brilliant beam of energy lanced out from the planet's surface, striking one of the probe drones. Ramos tensed, expecting to see the drone destroyed, but instead, the beam seemed to envelop it in a cocoon of light. "Sir, the drone is intact," his tactical officer reported, surprise evident in his voice. "The beam appears to be attempting to establish a communication link." Ramos's mind raced with the implications. This could be first contact with an entirely new civilization. Analyze that signal. I want to know everything about it. Frequency, modulation, energy signature. Prepare our systems to receive and interpret any incoming message. As his crew scrambled to comply, Ramos opened a channel to Admiral Jean, relaying the unexpected development. Meanwhile, on the Tholian homeworld, Commander Thorn and Krilzar were making a breakthrough of their own. As they sifted through the vast amounts of data from the activated crystalline collective outpost, patterns began to emerge. "Krilzar, look at this," Thorn said, his voice tight with excitement. He manipulated the holographic display, highlighting a series of energy signatures. "These readings, they're not random. They're coordinates." The Tholian's crystalline form pulsed with understanding. "A network of outposts," Krilzar said, his harmonic voice resonating with awe, "spread across the galaxy, dormant but waiting to be awakened." Thorn nodded, his fingers flying across the interface as he compiled their findings. "We need to get this information to Admiral Jean immediately. If we can locate and activate these outposts, we could create a defensive grid of unprecedented power," Krilzar finished. "A shield against any future Void Weaver incursions." As Thorn transmitted their findings, the Coalition leadership sprang into action. Admiral Jean quickly grasped the strategic importance of the discovery and began formulating plans. "Minister Lyra," Jean addressed the Tholian leader, "we need to assemble multiple task forces immediately. Each one will be assigned to locate and investigate potential crystalline collective outposts." Lyra's holographic form nodded in agreement. "I concur, Admiral. We must move swiftly but cautiously. Many of these systems may be inhabited. Jean turned to his staff. Prepare a list of our most experienced commanders, both human and alien. We'll need their expertise for these missions. Emphasize the need for diplomacy as well as tactical prowess. As the Coalition mobilized its forces, the scientific teams on the Tholian homeworld continued their work on the anti-dark matter device. Dr. Alara Chun, the lead human scientist, made an exciting discovery. We can miniaturize this technology, she explained to her team, holding up a small, pulsing crystal. With some modifications, we could adapt it for use on our ships. Imagine a fleet-wide defense against Void Weaver weapons. The news spread quickly through the Coalition ranks, sparking a flurry of activity as engineers began designing prototype systems for testing. In the newly stabilized wormhole network, Captain Drake's task force conducted their final series of jumps. As they emerged from a wormhole near the edge of known space, Drake's tactical officer called out urgently, "Captain, long-range sensors are picking up unusual energy signatures. They're faint, but, sir, they bear similarities to both Void Weaver and crystalline collective technologies." Drake's expression hardened as he studied the sensor readings. "Plot the source of those signatures," he ordered, "and open a secure channel to Admiral Jean. He needs to know about this immediately." As Drake prepared his report, he couldn't shake the feeling that their recent victory, as significant as it was, might only be the opening move in a much larger game. The galaxy, it seemed, still held many secrets and potential threats, waiting to be uncovered. As Drake's report reached Admiral Jean, the Coalition leadership convened an emergency meeting to discuss their next steps. These energy signatures could be the key to understanding the full scope of the Void Weaver threat, Jean said, his holographic form addressing the gathered officials. "We need to investigate immediately." Minister Lyra's crystalline form pulsed with agreement. "Indeed, Admiral, but we must proceed with caution. If these signatures truly combine both Void Weaver and crystalline collective technologies, we may be facing a threat beyond our current understanding." Jean nodded, his mind already formulating a plan. "We'll assemble an elite team for this mission, the best of the best from all our allied species." As the Coalition mobilized for this new endeavor, Captain Ramos and his exploration fleet continued their work with the spatial anomalies. The crystalline beings on the other side of the window had established a rudimentary communication link, and Ramos's team worked tirelessly to decipher their complex language. "Sir, we've made a breakthrough," his communications officer reported, excitement evident in her voice. "We've managed to translate a portion of their message. They're calling themselves the Luminous Accord. And they're offering an alliance." Ramos's eyes widened at the implications. An alliance? With a completely new civilization? This could change everything. Relay this information to Admiral Jean immediately. As the Coalition forces consolidated their recent victory and explored these new frontiers, Admiral Jean initiated a bold, final mission to secure the future of both the Coalition and the entire galaxy. He assembled an elite team, combining the most adaptable human operatives with enhanced Tholian volunteers and representatives from other allied species. The team gathered aboard the HSS Invincible, now further upgraded with the latest crystalline collective technology and anti-dark matter defenses. Commander Thorne, standing on the bridge, marveled at the ship's transformation. What was once a standard human vessel now pulsed with an otherworldly energy, its hull gleaming with embedded crystals. "All systems are go, Admiral," Thorne reported, his fingers dancing over the holographic controls. "We're ready to embark on your command." Jean's holographic form appeared before the assembled crew. "You carry with you the hopes of not just humanity, but all the species of our Coalition. The source of these energy signatures may hold the key to lasting peace in our galaxy. Godspeed and good hunting." The Invincible slipped into the newly stabilized wormhole network, its enhanced engines humming with power. As they traveled, the ship encountered pockets of intense radiation, gravitational anomalies, and even temporal distortions. The alien crew members required extensive protection, their bodies struggling against the extreme conditions. In contrast, the human team members displayed remarkable endurance. Commander Thorne watched in amazement as his fellow humans continued to function effectively despite the punishing environment. "How are you holding up, Specialist Chen?" Thorne asked, noticing the young engineer working tirelessly at her station. Chen looked up, her face drawn but her eyes alert. "I'm fine, sir, just a bit of fatigue. Nothing I can't handle." "These readings are fascinating. I've never seen energy fluctuations like this before." As they neared their destination, the ship's sensors began to light up with warnings. Captain Drake's voice came over the intercom, tense but controlled. "All hands, brace for emergence. We're picking up massive energy readings ahead." The Invincible burst out of the wormhole, and the crew gasped collectively at the sight before them. A vast, artificial construct surrounded a dying star, pulsing with a combination of Void Weaver and crystalline collective energies. It was a sprawling network of interconnected structures, each one larger than a planetary moon. "By the stars," Thorne breathed, his eyes wide. "What is this place?" Before anyone could respond, the construct's automated defense systems roared to life. Powerful energy beams lanced out towards the Invincible, while swarms of autonomous fighters poured from hidden hangars. "Evasive maneuvers," Drake shouted, his hands flying over the controls. The Invincible dove and rolled, its enhanced systems straining against the onslaught. As the space battle raged, Commander Thorne turned to his ground team. "We need to get inside that construct. It's the only way to uncover its secrets and potentially end this conflict for good." The Tholian member of his team, a crystalline being named Xyrix, vibrated with concern. "Commander, the radiation levels out there are lethal. Even with our most advanced protective gear, we'd only have minutes before suffering severe cellular damage." Thorne's teeth clenched. "Then we'll have to move fast. Suit up, team. We're going in." Despite protests from their alien allies about the dangers, Thorne and his human teammates donned their minimally enhanced spacesuits. As they prepared to exit the ship, Thorne caught sight of his reflection in the airlock's polished surface. The grit in his eyes was mirrored by each member of his human team. "Remember," Thorne said, his voice steady, "our mission is to reach the central chamber and uncover the source of these energy signatures. Stay alert, stay together, and above all, stay alive." The airlock hissed open, and the team launched themselves into the chaos of space. Energy beams crisscrossed the void around them as they navigated towards the construct's surface. Thorne led the way, his suit's thrusters pushing him through fields of deadly radiation that would have incapacitated their alien allies. As they approached the construct's outer hull, a stray energy blast grazed Specialist Chen's suit, tearing a gash in the material. For a heart-stopping moment, Thorne watched as Chen was exposed to the vacuum of space. But to his amazement, she quickly patched the hole with a sealant from her toolkit, her movements precise despite the life-threatening situation. "Status, Chun," Thorne called over the comm. "Suit integrity restored, sir," Chen replied, her voice strained but steady. "I'm okay. Let's keep moving." The team pressed on, their human physiology allowing them to endure conditions that would have been fatal to most other species. They reached the maintenance hatch and forced their way inside, entering the alien construct that held the key to the galaxy's future. As they moved deeper into the structure, they encountered waves of automated defenders. The team's weapons, enhanced with crystalline collective technology, proved effective against the ancient guardians. Thorne watched in awe as his team displayed incredible stamina, quickly recovering from injuries that would have incapacitated other species. "Sir, I'm picking up a massive energy source ahead," Jim reported, her eyes fixed on her scanner. "It's unlike anything I've ever seen before. I think we've found the central chamber." Thorn nodded, his mind racing with the possibilities and dangers that lay ahead. "All right, team. This is it. Whatever we find in there could change the course of galactic history. Let's move." As they approached the sealed doors of the central chamber, Thorn couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the precipice of something monumental. The fate of not just humanity, but all sentient life in the galaxy might well rest on what they discovered beyond those doors. With a deep breath, he gave the signal to breach the entrance, ready to face whatever ancient secrets awaited them.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.